Welcome to the Church of the Burning Bush of the Most High. I am your pastor, the Reverend Roland Doobies, back once again to have, how do I want to put it? I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted right out of the gate here because like 2 seconds before I hit play, my left eye started twitching randomly, and now I feel like I have something in it and it's twitching. So I'm a little bit distracted. My apologies, but don't worry. The Spirit will lead indeed. We got a lot in store for you today, okay? First and foremost, as always, we will hunt out the heretics and we will burn them on the metaphorical stake. Metaphorical, of course, like a video game, right? So we're going to find them out and we're going to bring them to light, because what is in the dark will eventually be brought to the light, as it says in the good word. Actually, I'm kind of going to set off on a little bit of a series here, I think, hopefully. You know, if important things happen, and I may have to veer off, but hopefully I'll come back. I've been seeing a lot of posts. I had one queued up for last week that we just didn't get to, or the other day, even. It wasn't even last week, the other day. And it was about supposed, like, it involved left-wing thinkers, right? But lumped some left-wing figures in with, like, Jeffrey Epstein and stuff on the basis of them, all the figures being Jewish. I do still want to watch that, but I have a little bit of an order because I came across this other video. In fact, we can go back down to earth here. Yeah. So I saw a couple of pastors, I believe they are, but they have a podcast. I've seen them before. I think his name's Sean McDowell, I think is the name. Is that correct? Let's see. We'll find out in a moment, right? Pretty sure that's his name. If I'm wrong, I'll correct, right? I'm trying to watch guys. On the one hand, I want to give you guys some more insights into how I came across Christianity and how I began to understand what it was to be a Christian. So I think that is important to go back in the archives, because I think some of it's hilarious. And in some ways it's quite innocent, especially compared to much of what we're seeing these days. But I want to keep my eye on the present as well, and maybe make some distinctions between the kind of Christianity you get when you're rolling with the Reverend and the kind you get when you're a apostate heretic, which you can call them whatever you want, Christian nationalist, conservative, evangelical. As far as I'm concerned, they're all heretics, and we're not giving up the name Christianity here. We're going to take ownership over it. We're not going to give it up. We're not going to give it up. There's no reason to just cede ground to these fake Christians. We're going to make it fucking serious. So let's see. Well, I think we should just dig right in. But the topic here is, wow, I ramble. That was all to get to that point. The topic is left-wing Christianity. And the title of this is called Why Christians Should Not Be Leftists. And I kind of know like basically what they're going to say before we even watch it here. But if you're not familiar, or even if you are, I still want to walk through the way mostly that they understand their opponents, right? Do they understand the beliefs? First of all, do they understand who their opponents are? Like, who are they talking about directly? Do they understand correctly what those people would believe? You know, are they operating in good faith? These are questionable things. I think we should just dig in. I don't have anything like else crazy to say introductory wise. I just want to dig in. And then after we watch this, not today probably, because it's, you know, a little bit long. I want to change the playback speed right out of the gate so that I don't forget. And let's see what these dudes got to say.
Biblical authority and keeps advancing such a bad argument, it makes me question the commitment to biblical authority, and at least say on this issue something is overriding biblical authority from the culture.
Being a Christian doesn't make you feel like you're on top of things. It actually makes you feel like you're under things and in need of grace.
I get why people are drawn to the left. I understand it. At the very end, though, why I think I'm not is there's no other way to put it than it's just divorced from reality. Should Christians be leftists? Can leftism consistently be wed with a Christian worldview?
Hold on. Are they going to say their freaking names, or do they just expect me to know it? Because I got to know the names here before. Yeah, Sean McDowell. I was right. And I don't know who the other dude is. Am I supposed to care? They don't really make much of a big deal about him, so we'll see.
And is leftism gaining ground in the church and in the culture? Scott Ray, we've got a fascinating new book we're going to do a review on by Phil Christman called Why Christians Should Be Leftists. You ready to rock and roll?
I'm ready. Let's get to it.
All right, so this is really more of an essay than it is a book. It's kind of a testimony of his experience, which we'll get to. But before we dive into the case that he makes, what does the author mean by leftism? What are we talking about here?
Well, he distinguishes it from liberalism, which he's referring to political liberalism there, as opposed to, and just to be clear for our listeners, the term classic liberalism is different than political liberalism, which is different than leftism.
Okay.
The classic liberal tradition is what our founding fathers had in mind: of individual rights, free expression, limited government, things like that that form, I think, sort of the heart and soul of political conservatism today. Political liberalism,
limited government
is a different view of that, which takes a larger view for the state, heavier taxes, more services, things like what we might call democratic socialism, which we see in Scandinavia and parts of Europe, where it's just a different arrangement where taxes are higher, services are more provided, and there's less space for what we call mediating institutions that stand between the state and the individual. Leftism is political liberalism on steroids.
Okay.
And the leftism that he's describing here is, I think, sort of heavy on deconstructing.
Okay, just you probably didn't catch it on. I did just see this too on the bottom of the screen earlier. Yeah, they're just, maybe they said it too and I just missed it because I was distracted. But they're going over some dude's book, right, that's arguing for a leftist Christianity. I don't know who Phil Christman is, but I respect his last name.
The institutions, mainly of the market economy, where the liberal, I would say, political liberals want to remodel the house. Okay? Leftists want to tear the house down and create something new. Create an entire.
All right. I'll be straight right here. This dude is at least presenting in a simple way and easy to digest way some of these differences, and he's right about the way that he's doing it. Okay, so I want to say, at least out of the gate here, that is the way to approach the subject with some level of good faith, at least to this point, in Pastor Doobie's opinion. I would continue to have a conversation. He's free to continue to offer critique as they will, and then I will offer my own criticisms back, because I'm sure that I will have plenty of them. The one problem I have, what he's getting into right now, like trying to paint leftism as tearing everything down in order to start everything brand new. I think maybe like the better way to put it is like leftism wants to take aspects, the best aspects of capitalism, right, and ditch the worst aspects of capitalism, because leftists recognize that there are certain contradictions, right, within the capitalist dynamic that Marx believed would eventually lead to its fall. Now, Marx, at least to this point, has not been correct, right? But his criticisms of capitalism still stand. If anything, Marx probably just didn't quite yet grasp the ingenuity of capital and its ability to swallow, like, literally everything. But the main thing that the left would want to get rid of would be private ownership of the means of production, right? Like, an actual left would want the government to be a democracy, right? It's a democracy, but it's also there to provide services, like he was saying, right? It is there to provide services and things like that. And there's also maybe a group of sort of like in between. This is the wrong way to talk about it, I think. There's kind of a spectrum, I guess, because if you were going to take certain leftists, I guess, might even say themselves that they want to tear everything down and start everything new, right? And then others, I would argue, a little more, I don't know, intelligently and sympathetic to other people. No one wants to hear that, and it's not like the left really wants to get rid of everything. There are certainly good parts of capitalism. The productive forces of capitalism have been, in some senses, outstanding, but can you allow capital to run wild without it doing exactly what it has done, in the United States? The consolidation of wealth into the hands of fewer and fewer people constantly, it's just getting worse and worse. They've got to the point where it's pretty obvious that this is just an oligarchy in the United States of America at this point. It's just not even, I don't know. We'll see about elections, right? I think Pastor Doobies at this point thinks we'll have elections, but it's getting crazier and crazier every year. So, I don't know. I'm really rambling. I had a point. Maybe we should watch the video so I can get back in.
System.
Pastor Doobies got a new strain before the sermon. So.
Because he describes the political liberals as being complicit with capitalism.
He does. That's right.
And so what that suggests is that he wants to dismantle the whole apparatus and start over again. Right? Now, of course, what the starting over again looks like is a lot trickier than dismantling the current. But that's basically what he means by leftism. Is that how you read it?
Yeah. So he's not talking about theological leftism, although we see that seep in here at times. It's more political. And so sometimes we tend to think, well, those to the right of us, wherever we are fundamentalists, and those a little bit to the left of us, we might call liberals or leftists. He is way to the left politically than probably most, if almost any, at least in the evangelical world. So he functionally...
I think that's true. And I think he would be far to the left of most in the Democratic Party.
Yeah, he has a chapter why the Democratic Party doesn't go far enough. We'll get to that. Why classical liberalism doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, I mean, classical liberalism, he wants very, very little
Nothing to do with. Okay, so he says here on page 67, leftism would mean either heavy taxes on or common ownership of the sort of property that produces wealth. So he really means socialism, but in many ways is also very favorable at times towards Marxism. So that's the kind of leftism that he seems to be arguing for.
He says the leftist view, instead of a market economy where it's individuals, doing mutually beneficial exchanges, it's more the idea.
All right. I don't think these guys probably don't know too much about China, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm some sort of expert, but what I know is that although, they are a socialist country or aiming at socialism with Chinese characteristics. They're also, it's not like there's not regular commerce and exchange of goods with money. They put limits largely at the top, especially now because it's still a transitioning economy. It's transitional, and does it want to be more and more socialist? That is my understanding. But at least now they are not allowing. They'll off billionaires, right? Like, they will do that, or send them off to like a work camp, as if they try to fuck over the people of China. Like, they're representing. That's the way it's seen, and I believe that's the way that the people, for the most part, as far as I know, see it as well. They're like, we want that because our lives are very clearly improving at a rapid rate, more rapid than any other time in human history. Like, it's just getting better and better there all the time. And every decade you look back and it's like, oh, they've met more goals that they had set. Absolutely incredible, like mind-blowing, right? So I think that kind of thing should also be kept in mind when we're listening to guys like this describe what socialism is and what capitalism is. Because while the ideal of like a communist state, and it is just that, it is an ideal, it's not something that could really happen, I don't think. But as a sort of heaven for atheists, I don't see it as a bad idea, right? Like, having that kind of equality and like peace and things would be awesome, right? And it's worth trying to figure out the best ways to strive for a society that creates the most benefit and equality for all that you can, right? And that can be a flourishing society. There's no reason that people can't flourish. Socialism isn't a poverty cult, right? And the only people, like, if there's a taking of something, right? If there's a taking, it would be like a taking of Amazon, right? Or taking of the oil industry, or taking back all space shit. I don't know, right? Like, from Elon Musk. And just that kind of thing would be... Hold on. I lost my train of thought for a sec. I need a sip. That would be the taking. Or taking back money from the Bezoses of the world or the Elon Musks of the world, because they have fucked over the American people with their business practices. So they must pay the fine. They must pay the fine, right? And to be honest, for people that might think, oh, that would be so terrible and so unjust, and what about freedom and liberty? Whose freedom and liberty? Whose freedom and liberty? Mine? Or theirs? Like, ours? Or theirs? Right? Because they're also the ones who pay us. It's kind of bullshit. Anyway, I should let these guys talk a little more. I'm sure I'll have plenty of time to rant.
What he calls it, the means of producing our stuff, is commonly owned.
Right.
And the ownership of those, as Marx described, the means of production, can't be owned by individuals who concentrate their wealth and their ownership by virtue of that. So it's either state owned, but more owned in common, more owned by the public.
No, here's maybe the benefit, and I don't know, I haven't read this guy's book, obviously, but maybe the benefit of starting from that point where it's like, everything is, we want to take down everything and start all brand new, is that if you think of it from sort of the position of a blank slate to the best of your ability, right? And say, if we were to build a new society from scratch, wouldn't a lot of these laws like just make common sense? Like, they're way better than saying, that, if you offer them what we have right now, which clearly so many Americans, whether they understand it or not, clearly think shit sucks. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what
is
else
what
they say.
they're
He's
after.
not. Still though, he's not being terrible. But I want to keep that in mind as well as we go, because I know which direction these guys are gonna go in.
We're going to offer some of our critique of that, but I'd love to know what you think the author gets right. Whenever I read a book like this, my first instinct is I'm going to take issue with this book. I look for areas I have common ground, areas that are positive, areas I can learn from. So what do you think the author gets right?
I think there are a number of things. First on my list is the biblical mandate to care for the poor.
Okay.
The biblical mandate to make sure that our policies and our public policy doesn't disadvantage further the least among us. And I think that's a biblical mandate that I think he gets right.
Okay.
The other one that I think
doesn't well, I mean, I don't know. I would be more extreme than that, I think. Doesn't disadvantage anymore. Like, no, like it has to actually do something to make sure that they are disadvantaged less, so that they're not disadvantaged, because, that's the whole thing.
I think it's really strong that I think he gets right. And this is a critique of capitalism in general, is it does lead to overconsumption. I mean, I think we all could benefit from deaccumulating the amount of stuff that we have. In fact, one of my worst nightmares is that my wife and I are going to pass prematurely and leave our kids to sort all that out. And God forbid. I think he rightly recognizes the importance of politics, and I think he gets the definition of that right. He gets that exactly right.
I was curious
so
if you thought that.
Yeah, and this is why we've said before, Sean, that this is what makes politics fundamentally a moral enterprise.
That's right.
Because it's how we order our lives together. And economics is intertwined with that, because economics, to go a step further, is how we balance the burdens and benefits of how we order our lives together in community. Those are all have significant moral overtones, and I think he gets that right. And I love, toward the end, he says, the essence of Christian faith is that we're all sinners in need of grace. And if, being a Christian doesn't make you feel like you're on top of things. It actually makes you feel like you're under things and in need of grace. He points out we live in a moral universe.
That's just a language thing, right? Semantics, I guess. It doesn't. The whole under thing, like, whatever. I clearly, and Pastor Doobies will say this many times, I'm sure, for as long as I am blessed to be able to hold service, okay? I continued to just get more and more humble the more and more I studied and read and learned and saw different views, different positions on so many different, seemingly minor issues that become so important in, the Bible. And that made me feel like, wow, I need to be a little more careful about how dogmatic I am when I speak about anything, because this doesn't make sense, right? But by learning and by studying and by coming to my own conclusions, which were, it became more and more different than my more dogmatic fundamentalist friends at the time, they would say, my different interpretation was a refusal to submit to God and be under his authority, right? And it's like, it doesn't make any sense from my experience, because from my experience, it was always driven by this desire to understand God, Jesus, the Bible, all that shit. I'm trying to understand it, and I'm feeling more and more humble constantly, and also realizing the depths. I went through this whole thing with the depths of my sinfulness. It's just this whole idea, you couldn't do anything right? And then it's when you start reading the Synoptic Gospels and you're reading about Jesus and his grace and his welcomingness and his forgiveness, to me it's how the fuck am I supposed to be judging anybody on this at all? Because I don't know, right? And for a long time, that humility stayed with me, and it still does stay with me. But on the other hand, part of the reason that Pastor Doobies does this show is because there's a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing out there, a lot of heretics, and I am a heresy hunter, and I'm coming for you. I'm coming for you. And I don't have a problem being dogmatic about things that, like, I know I've put the time in to study, right? I know enough, and I can tell when even just discussing things with people, if they, for the most part, right, if they know less than me or more than me or like about as much as me on a certain topic, right? It's one of my weird like traits that I don't know, superpowers or whatever, the gifts of the Spirit, discernment, maybe you could call it, right? It is. I can see, I got good pattern recognition. We could put it that way too. I recognize really easily when someone starts talking to me, like, especially if I'm very familiar with a particular like news host or something like that. I'm very, very good at knowing who they listen to just by the things that they're most interested in and the talking points, right? I could, like, it's kind of obvious to me when someone exclusively watches Fox News, right? Or if they're watching, like, or formerly watching Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, right? Because it just gets progressively crazier. I'm not, again, not that I'm going to be able to name like exactly every time. If it's a more familiar person that I'm watching frequently, that's a different story. But it's not really that hard to pinpoint basically where someone's going to come from, because there's really only like a few avenues that conservatives and liberals, kind of approach the game from. At least that's my way of seeing
morality.
Things.
I think he's right that God has embedded a moral framework into the nature of reality, and our intuitions every day tell us that that's true. And every time somebody is the victim of injustice, your relativism goes out the window because people say, "No, I've been wronged."
Yeah, well, this is actually in some ways close to what I was describing a few minutes ago in a slightly different context. But yeah, like, that's absolutely true. But this is the same argument, just in different words, that I've been hearing since, some of my earliest days in Christianity. I remember reading a book by John MacArthur when he was coming at the emergent church, or the emerging church, and it was called The Truth War. And this argument is thrown around so much. Like, I'll be like, oh, the postmodernist will come up to you and say, there's no such thing as absolute truth. And all you need to basically say back is, oh yeah, is that absolutely true? Is that absolutely true? I mean, it's just a really poor understanding of, obviously, like, actual postmodern, what would be called postmodern philosophy and stuff like that is far more complex than just this simple kind of like straw man representation of what postmodernism means, right? And I wouldn't consider myself really postmodern. And I do, and right, and I would also say I don't appreciate your critique here, because nobody actually says that, right? The point of a more wow, I'm stumbling, right? I would say a more accurate, kind of concise definition of what's going on in postmodernism is that language and consciousness of it and how it works and how it comes to you and what it is an extraordinarily complicated thing, right? And communication is far, far more difficult than you would expect, just on like thinking like than a lot of people expect, right? Or maybe even that certain philosophers were proposing, right, in the 17 or 1800s. These guys come in the 20th century, question some of these things, and they're not the only ones, right? There's certain people that get classified as postmodern, like Derrida, and who else is usually in there? Foucault, people like that. Like, those aren't my guys, but it's not that there isn't meaning to be found or ways to communicate, right? What you're doing right now is you're almost proving the point, because it shows how simple, like how language can be manipulated so easily. There's no such thing as absolute truth. Then you can't say that is an absolute truth, right? But it's just a problem. That's a problem with language, right? And the issue is more about things are really complicated. And if you assume that, for instance, words are like one-to-one signifying a thing, like a tree is a tree, right? Like that can't, be misinterpreted, right, by someone hearing it, right? It's like you're not giving much thought to how language works, and metaphor and metonym and just sliding signifiers, all of this kind of stuff. And the reason that they would hear those kind of arguments in their setting in the conservative church is because that's how they hold their doctrine. That's how they've tended to hold their doctrine, right? At the very least, throughout my whole life. It's very dogmatic in a way that you can think like that, but the only reason you think like that is because you have started from the point of dogma. And I know they wouldn't want to hear that, and they would argue, and maybe I'd be more generous through conversation. But right now, I mean, that's just basically, that's
for the
facts.
Relativist, the giant says who question looms large, but not for Christman. Ultimately, we live in a moral universe because God said these things are right or wrong. He offers a critique. He doesn't have a lot of tolerance for woke stuff, which I appreciate. He points out, scientism. He has. Let's just say he doesn't have his faith in science to be able to take over what would be lacking if you put religious faith on the back burner is not high. So he's not a secularist. I think his Christian faith is real, and I think as a result of that, he gets some things right. You got other things you want to add?
Yeah, that's a great list. That's pretty much many of the common ones that I had. His definition of politics.
All right, I'll pause that for a second. Guy was not he was kind of fair. He disagrees. I don't know what else he knows about the subject, but he seems, informed, and I don't think he was being mean. Well, obviously, so far they're really saying the stuff they like about it or trying to be generous. Anyway, so I guess we'll see when they get down to the nitty-gritty, and that'll be the more fun section, I think. So maybe I should just let him talk here, because there will be these subjects will come
he says
up
it's
again
just
and again,
morality
I'm
is
sure.
practiced by more than one person. As humans, we need each other. Thus, we have to continue to hash out how we'll live together. And so he agrees with us. We differ on his political views, but he's basically saying we need to think biblically about politics, and politics is one way we love our neighbor. We would agree with that approach, differ on the practice, which we'll get to.
And I think we might actually differ on some of the ends of politics.
I think that's right.
And we would definitely differ on many of the means to accomplish those ends. In the past, I think we've said that generally there's widespread agreement on the ends of what a political...
See, even this guy, right? He's not your Doug Wilson type, obviously. I don't think either one of these guys are, right? He's not out and out Christian nationalist, even if they would probably vote the same way most times, right? Almost all the time. So does it really matter? Subject for another day. But he's concerned, he mentioned secularism. I want to know what even this guy means now when he says secularism, right? Because to me it's secularism probably versus the kingdom of God, right? And as a good Bible-believing Christian, as long as my interpretation of the Bible is the one we're talking about, I'm all about the kingdom of God, because in my vision, which I believe is the Lord's vision, we're not going to be doing the Nazi shit at all, right? And while I too am not into like identity politics so much, I share the goals of identity politics. I just don't like how they can very easily get weaponized. So, as usual, white guy walking a thin line on that subject. But yeah, like it depends what you mean by woke, I guess. And maybe this author is just smart enough to just throw in, I'm not really into the woke thing, but then just be mad woke everywhere and hope they don't notice, which they might not.
Economy should look like. I'm not so sure.
Oh yeah, but secularism versus the kingdom of God. If it's theirs, then I see him thinking theocracy, right? Like it's not going to be democracy. How's that going to work? Unless they really think everyone's just going to fall down to their apologetic arguments and bow the knee. I don't see how you have a Christian like centered government without force.
We will always agree on the ends
or violence
for this.
Fair enough. I think that's right, and we'll get to some of that. He says, for example, we live in a moral universe. He writes this on page 78. I did think you see coming through this idea, he goes that morality is not optional for Christians. And he says we live in a moral universe. This is one of the points that Christians of all stripes ought to agree about. Agree. We think that both morality and existence itself emanate from God's nature. But as a good leftist, God's nature seems to be reduced towards love. Which is love? And I go, yeah, it's love. It's also justice. And if you go too far to the right, it's just justice. In this case, too far to the left, it seems to just be love. I think we need to balance that out. But insofar as we live in a moral universe, he says morality, at least for Christians, is not an add-on. It's part of the fabric of the universe. Okay. Amen to that.
Absolutely right.
He says scientism tends to reduce us to selfish survival machines. I'm reading this going, amen. So there's plenty we can be positive about. But in some ways, he says this is really more of an essay than a book. And I thought it was fascinating because he's kind of given a testimony. Like somebody could stand up.
Yeah, I would obviously disagree. If you know Pastor Doobie's theology, Pastor Doobie's going to disagree. I don't have a problem with a little bit of an open God, God is not subject to the dictates of Pastor Doobie's theological opinions. You know what I mean? He's bigger than all that. And yours as well. So, or she, whichever, it doesn't matter. None of them can contain. They're just descriptors we try to use to describe what is going on, right? God's not really a man or a woman. It's God, right? It's not even really God. God's just our word for God, right? It's crazy to think about. I don't know. Pastor Dewey's is on some
evangelical
weird
church
shit
about how he left kind of the right-leaning Republican Party, remained a Christian in the way he describes it, and now is on the left. So I'm curious what you make of his conversion story and any points that jumped out as significant to you.
Well, it seemed his conversion, quote, political conversion, was because he read the Sermon on the Mount.
That's right.
And was deeply, deeply impacted by that. And I think saw a whole host of things that had implications for him in terms of politics and economics. Now, I think we'll debate a bit with some of the takes that he had, takeaways from the Sermon on the Mount.
I want some of the I want some of the detail, because the Sermon on the Mount
it got him sort of started on this leftward trend. And I would say, I wonder,
it played a pretty
this is
good
a point
role
that we've
for me
made
too.
in the past when we've talked about the intersection of Christian faith and politics and economics is the political and economic world in which the Bible was written was so different.
Absolutely,
than
that's
today.
right.
And that's why I think we got to be very careful in how we do any direct application from the biblical text, namely things like the Sermon on the Mount.
I agree. And I'm not sure how this dude put it or the way he thinks about it. So I hope that's why I want them to get into details, because Pastor Doobie is going to have some, his own things to say. Don't hide the truth from me, boys.
Today. So there's just a whole host of really significant differences that have to be taken into account. I mean, the big one is that, if you would have asked the average person in the first century who they were going to vote for, we have a vote. Like, so what do we vote? We're voting for Caesar or not. You don't vote for Caesar, you lose your head. And economics was completely different. It was a zero-sum economic world, and so there was this necessary connection between winners and losers, and people were stuck in the economic strata that they were born into. Nobody. There were no rags to riches stories in the ancient world. Lots of the opposite, as the prodigal son shows. But you have to take those differences into account. Now, we'll talk more about how he reads the Sermon on the Mount in a bit.
Okay.
So some of the things that jumped out on page 1, the title is Testifying, and he talks about growing up in a fundamentalist, evangelical, Pentecostal, Calvinist background. Now, I don't want to...
It's quite a combination.
It is, and my point is not to pick on any one of those, but I've written a book on deconstruction, and just you hear this over and over again when people move to atheism, agnosticism, progressive Christianity. There's very much a reaction against the way somebody was raised.
And I think what this sounds to me like is...
Yeah, see, that's bullshit. I'll tell you why. Because that's the time that it would be most likely to happen, because you're born into Christianity, right? So automatically, in order for the other category to even exist, they have to be, Interestingly, one of the rare figures is me, Pastor Roland Doobies, because I was an adult convert to Christianity. I did have familiarity when I was a kid, but as you know from last week's episode, go back and watch if you want to learn a little bit about my story. Wasn't really into the church stuff at all, and it kind of came on in my teen years a little bit from my mom. And there was some crazy stories I told, wasn't a big, thing. Becoming a Christian was something that I chose to do later in my life. And I had a kind of another conversion, like maybe something along the lines of what the person who wrote this book had, right? It's not because of where I was raised, it's because of what I learned. And I think it's kind of a cop-out to even bring that up, because it suggests like that those people like are just bitter and they're not able to actually use their minds, when in reality, no, it's just what happens. There's more of them than there is people like me, right? A lot more than people like me. So that's a fake.
The sub-theme underneath this is religious rigidity.
I think that's right, and that's a part of the theme that we hear, understandably so. Yeah, but in his mind, he's like, instead of chucking the faith, I want to hold on to Jesus, but re-envision what that looks like politically and economically is how he approaches this. So we don't need to talk about this, but he walks through how he assumed that the Republican Party was exactly what it meant to be a Christian. He's concerned about the wedding between the two.
Same.
His case of how he went left is he feels like President Barack Obama was just completely attacked by Christians.
This is not
in terms
my
of
story.
Being a secret Muslim and his character, etc. The economic crash of 2008. He talks a lot about that. Talks about Michael Brown and Tamir Rice and some of these stories, Eric Garner, Freddie Gray, that started to emerge about 2012, 2013, really shaped him.
Those ones.
And he felt like concerns about wokeness and CRT were just a diversion from the issue. Donald Trump put him over the top. He's like, once people can support Donald Trump and call themselves Christians, I'm out. The Me Too movement, the pandemic. I'm trying to give people a sense of, and we're not going to go into this narrative, but they have a sense of where he came from and how it frames where he's at now.
You can sort of see one domino falling after another. And you get to the end of the dominoes, and there's not much left that he was wanting to embrace, except for, I think he still embraced the scriptures. He still embraced his relationship to Jesus. Now, I think we read the scriptures quite differently. as a result of that. And I think we all have our lenses through which we read the scriptures. And I think let's just say, I think some political, economic lenses are stronger than others for some people.
Sure.
And I think it's less clear, Sean, which came first, the political reorientation or his
that's an
reading
interesting
scripture.
question.
And I think for him, the Sermon on the Mount probably came first, and that was the first. That was what kicked off the dominoes falling. But it's not as clear that he continued to read the scriptures, I think, through without those pretty strong left-leaning lenses.
You're right.
Okay, again, I think that this is, well, I don't know. I don't want to say it's unfair, because he did also admit that everyone's got their lenses. I would say, no, you're right, maybe, to a large extent, but that is literally what you are trained to do, and probably what you train other people to do, but just to approach it with a right wing, maybe a slightly more liberal one. I'm not sure if these guys are, Trump guys or not. I'm guessing. I don't know. I'd be interested to know. We'll find out eventually, or someday, I'm sure. But yeah, this is definitely not. It's not fair if what he's insinuating is that he's kind of doing this whole process in a more radical sort of way, and he's positioning himself as, yeah, of course we all read it through a lens, but I see some things when it seems maybe a little more socialist, and I see other things where maybe someone could say it's a little more capitalist, right? But hey, the whole point is blah blah blah, and it's like, all right, I bet you to a large extent this other dude that wrote the book would agree with that, but that wasn't the point, right? He was just making a short version of the narrative of his change of heart politically, and that's the way he decided to do it, and I'm sure it's true, even if it's not thorough.
Some of what he talks about here in the Sermon on the Mount was, it suggested a life that was available to me and to them. I felt the possibility of universal solidarity, as opposed to this kind of Darwinian winners and losers approach on the right. You have this universal solidarity we should lean into, which is a theme we always hear on the left. So he's drawn in by that. Now, one thing he talks about...
which is, I think, just another way of saying that what you had mentioned earlier is that the left tends to emphasize love, the right tends to emphasize justice. And, that's, I think, that's another way of saying some of those same things.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So we're gonna come back to.
I don't even think that's
some of the
true.
issues that we've just.
I don't think that, though. I don't think that is true. I think that is I think if the guy who wrote the book still holds on to that, that's something he's still got to shred. That's something you still got to shred, because it is exactly what these guys believe too. It's exactly what they believe, right? About their opponents, right? So they would say the problem with theological liberals is that they focus exclusively on love, right? Or too much on love. And it's the liberals, they'll say, who believe that the God of the Old Testament is mean and the God of the New Testament is good. This is the way that they paint their opponents, right? And it's not even, maybe there's some people that believe that, but I've never read any theologian of importance who's suggested that's the view. The view is more it's both everywhere, right? But also the left, in my view, is, while very concerned about love, is equally concerned with justice, because they're one and the same, right? They're two sides of the same coin. There is no love where there is no justice. So it's not an emphasis of love at all. It's a correction on what justice means, right? Love helps you understand justice, and justice helps you understand love. And that is hard to wrestle through, which is why in our conversations, after we watch some of these guys for a few weeks with these few videos, different guys discussing similar subjects, right? To see what their politics are all about and how they view Pastor Doobies and us here in the Church of the Burning Bush of the Most High, the Bushman Entertainment Network. Okay? The heresy hunters. We'll see how they view us. And then I'm going to take us back on a little bit of a history journey, possibly too. And we're going to talk about some left-wing theology a little bit too. I'm going to show the good guys as well. Why would I not want to show you the good theology? We're not exclusively going to heresy hunt. Pastor Doobies can give sermons. I can preach out the word. I can do that sometimes. Sometimes we're going to watch some of the brethren, watch some of their clips or some of their videos to get some views. But I want people to know what's actually involved with something like liberation theology, right? What is it? Because I'll tell you right now, like most people, most evangelicals, even many of their teachers and like so-called scholars aren't well read at all, or maybe even read at all in liberation theology, right? And again, that's not all of them. Some have, and we'll see what they say about that too, maybe someday. But
peppered on here, but early in the book, page 25, he raises some of the questions of what this means for the LGBTQ conversation. And part of his leftism, which seems to always occur in my book, maybe someone could find exceptions to this, involves a rejection of the historic Christian view of sex and marriage and embracing LGBTQ relationships and identities. Now, he 3 times says in the book on different pages, 25, 58, and 86, that we know something by its fruit. And it says sometimes theological arguments you can only settle by observations. So he's talking about certain biblical arguments about sex and marriage. And he says once I was in several churches where some people who, what does he describe as lesbians, were not able to serve. He goes, for me, that's the end of the debate. That people say we want to obey Jesus, but some people couldn't serve. And then he says, that some people would stand in the way of a gay person's right to marry. I'm out. Now, I have a lot of thoughts on this. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, again, like you, I'm not particularly surprised that this is where he went. It's not a central part of what he's dealing with. In my view, this is another domino that fell, and it's not a surprise at all that it's one that did. I think part of the left-leaning culture is and this emphasis on inclusion, and what he talked about, emphasis on sort of universal solidarity, is I think another way of saying that they're trying to be as inclusive as possible. And I think I'm not surprised. And I want to
because it doesn't fucking matter, right? Like, it's a weird thing, and the reason someone like this, I'm sure, has to bring this subject up in the book, even if it's not a main point of the book or anything, is because it is one of those markers that stands you apart from these heretics, right? It's one of those markers that shows that you've actually, like, significantly departed from them, because they talk about sex stuff all the fucking time. All the time, right? Being against gay marriage, at least in my experience in churches, and it's not just churches, to be fair. I can't only blame churches, because it's also the things things outside of church, the things that are very deeply connected to so much of the conservative church. Fox News, talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, like all that, like those guys presented as Christians. The people at your church listen to those people, right? You all have the same positions, like on abortion and on the gays. So like, that's, it has to be said. It has to be said. And it's fair to say it, but it's because these guys are also, even though they're admitting it's like a small portion in the book and being like, oh, I'm not surprised. I want to know why he's not surprised, though. I hope he gets into this a little bit more. Because why are you not surprised? Like, how does he think this happens? Because he thinks something bad happened, right? Like, there was something that happened, and then that caused him to change everything about how he understood the Bible. And that, that did happen. But I want to know what he thinks it is.
I want to be careful.
That is what I'm
that
interested in.
We don't get the theological cart before the horse on this, because our theology, our ideas determine how we act.
They should.
No, and it doesn't. We're not leaving room for places where the church has failed, and I think the church has failed in some respects to show the love of Christ to the LGBTQ community. Now, I think we can do that without abandoning our convictions either. And it's true that there are some in the LGBTQ community who see our convictions as the same thing as not being loving toward them.
Sure.
And I think that's my guess is that's probably some of what he means by their fruits.
This is but this is a huge issue as well with conservative Christianity, that people like and what's the author's name here? Christman? Is that what it was? Christman. I like to have Christman on my side, I think, here too, in this. He hold on. I need to go back a couple seconds just so I can...
To show the love of Christ to the LGBTQ community. Now, I think we can do that without abandoning our convictions either. And it's true that there's some in...
Oh, he was talking about convictions, right? Evangelicals do this all the time. In fact, it's why, and unfortunately, I feel like there's even non-Christian conservatives who I know who might fall for this kind of nonsense too. Charlie Kirk, when he, if you asked him, do you hate gay people? He would say, no, I love them, right? He'd say the typical response that a conservative would. I don't want them to go to hell, though, and they'll go to hell. So I'm going to say it's wrong. I think it's wrong for society. I'm going to, I don't want it to be part of this. And what Charlie Kirk was saying there is just what every evangelical Christian I've ever known says when someone says, no, you hate them. But then they will make the argument like, well, what if, like, you were addicted to smoking crack? What if you were addicted? Shouldn't I tell you, and stand my ground? And that completely misunderstands everything, right? Because the issue isn't that people have disagreements on convictions, right? And sometimes you should, not just accept someone's behavior in the name of love, right? There's not a single person who thinks that, right? So by turning the attention to another thing that you think we both agree on would be a vice and bad for someone's health, no, that's not what needs to be changed. It's not the vice that's at issue in that way, right? It's we disagree about one thing being a vice, right? You don't have to teach me about convictions or how we disagree. That's a waste of your time. You got to make the argument here. I would say, in one case, you're trying to, keep someone alive, right? They may view it as you trying to halt their pleasure, or stop their pleasure, but you are trying to, keep them alive, potentially. Or in the other case, you're not doing anything for them. You think they're a stain on society. You think you don't want your kids to see it, right? You don't want them to have the same exact rights you do because you think it's wrong to do it. So you want to take away rights. You don't want them to be able to adopt kids because you don't like their lifestyle and you think they'll manipulate and brainwash the kids. These are the kind of things that they say all the time, right? It's bullshit, but that's what they say. So, I don't know. We'll let him go a little more. I got more to say, I'm sure. I'm getting aggravated with these guys.
As the same.
I'm not really getting aggravated with these guys. It's the whole... man, it took me a long time to get out of a lot of these ways of thinking and realize what was going on and what happened to me. So sometimes I get a little frustrated. Okay?
Sure.
And I think that's my guess is that's probably some of what he means by their fruits.
I agree, but he's adopting a certain view, a cultural understanding of love being affirmation, which I think is decidedly not biblical.
No, you think it's unbiblical because you... That's fine. That's fine. You disagree about what you think is biblical. But I guarantee you this man does not think that affirmation always means love. It doesn't always mean love. He says it means love in this case because your actions have a detectably negative effect on a certain people group based on who they are attracted to, right? And you can say whatever you want about them going to hell, right? If they don't believe in it or they don't believe they're going because of that, all you're doing is taking away their rights. And that's it. You can think in your mind you're doing whatever you want, but that's literally how every evil thing happens, right? You can define things in a lot of fucking different ways, right? And you can justify all kinds of shit in your mind.
And 3 times he says, by your fruits you shall know them. Well, what is the scriptures talking about? What is the point being made here? It's the fruit of repentance. It's the fruit of obedience. Look in the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew, again, 5 through 7, ironically in Matthew chapter 7, it's very clear that we judge a tree by its fruit. In that context, it's the fruit of obedience.
Oh, yeah. At one point I was going to say this too. Bro, I guarantee you right now, I mean, he's already done it in the book. The comments that he made about Trump, right? The comments he made about Trump. He clearly isn't affirming what Trump does, right? I'm sure he wouldn't be affirming of kidnapping the president of a foreign country, right? I guarantee you he's not affirming that shit, right? I don't know if these guys are or not, but there's a million other examples. He's affirming of one particular thing, and there is a sound argument, and whether these guys like it or not, there are very sound arguments in favor of, at the very least, saying that this whole issue, anything surrounding LGBT people, is a non-issue when it comes to the Bible. It is a non-issue. It's like getting wrapped up in like what a character is wearing in one chapter of the books.
Obedience. It's a fruit of lawfulness, and it's the fruit of repentance. And so 3 times he mistakes this argument. People have been doing this. I've responded to this for probably a decade and a half now, and people continue to advance this. And so to me, maybe this is uncharitable, Scott, but when somebody says we believe in biblical authority and keeps advancing such a bad argument, it makes me question the commitment to biblical authority, and at least say on this issue, something is overriding biblical authority from the culture. That's the case that I would make.
Fair enough.
All right, so he says that he goes after the Democratic Party.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Like, I understand that they're, talking to each other, and they know each other, and they know that they agree with each other, and their audience is primarily conservative Christians who think exactly like they do about this stuff. But it doesn't matter, really, because this is how they talk about the subject, even when people they disagree with are around. It's how they present it. They don't care. They are unabashedly, certain that their interpretation of the Bible when it comes to these matters is correct. And okay, come to that conclusion. But the arguments are not bad. He's just not apparently making any arguments from the Bible in this book. But I can bring you up like 10,000 videos and writings in a minute, basically, that give a detailed and historical perspective on every single one of the passages, right? Dealing with the issue of like gay people in the Bible. And there's hardly any of them. And they're questionable. And their interpretations are by no means anything certain, right? At all. Their application of it, I would argue, is what's absolutely heretical about their way of thinking, because it isn't loving, it isn't fruitful, and Pastor Doobies, you know too, does not believe in hell, right? I don't believe in hell. Not eternal conscious torment. That's for damn sure. And it's not because I don't think God is just, it's because I think God is just. You want to know why God is just? Because it's God's fault we're all in this mess, right? And God knows it's God's fault that we're all in this mess. And that's why he's made things right. That's the good theology. That's resurrection theology. These guys, I'm sorry. I need a buzzer on here or a gong. Bad take.
As not going far enough, which I just thought was interesting. You often hear it from the right, but to hear it from the left, their critique is going to be different from the right. Why does he say the Democratic Party doesn't go far enough?
Because it's in collusion with capitalism.
Exactly.
That's the point. And in his view, our capitalist system, right. And again, remember, he uses the term capitalism. I don't like that term because, but I'm going to use it because that's what he did. But just to remind our listeners, that Karl Marx coined that term, and it was intended pejoratively at emerging market systems. So I would prefer, market-based economies, things, market systems.
He's talking out of his ass. That's not true. Okay. Marx understood that capitalism was progressive, but the emerging forms of it, something that he saw before anybody else, right? And it's the reason why he's so famous, is because he saw certain contradictions, as I've talked about earlier, that nobody else saw, right? And he presented theories of how value is produced, and it's called the labor theory of value, right? And while capitalism, he was also positive about the productive forces of capitalism. He understood certain aspects of it. We were talking about this earlier in some respects, in different contexts, but he understood all that stuff. And he wasn't like making up capitalism. I don't know in what sense it would be a pejorative. It's a way to describe what it is, right? Because it's an invention of the time. It didn't exist, right, for very long before that. It was a changing system and a quickly developing system of private ownership and profits that he rightly saw basically turning out like it is fucking today, in our country. So he wasn't wrong about that. He was wrong about things, but he wasn't wrong about the monopoly, the tendency towards, and maybe that an inevitability of monopolization and the control of power in the hands of a few because of how much money they had, right? Because of how much money they have. And it's not just that. It's because they are the ones that the politicians listen to, right? The government gives them money to do projects, right? And then they get the patents. They get to profit off of everything too. It's just a big circle of friends handing out money to each other. And they own the media too, right? I know I'm sounding extraordinarily conspiratorial, but it's only because I'm talking simply. It's not. It's true, right? It's true, and I think we all know it at this point. He was right. So what are you gonna say? Marx knew what was gonna happen, even if he did not predict correctly, at least yet. The inevitable communism
but that's
in America.
A little more unwieldy to say. So we'll go with capitalism for now with that caveat.
Fair enough.
Also crazy because I know for a fact that a young Karl Marx wrote several letters, and you can actually look them up online. Maybe someday I will here, to Abraham Lincoln, because he was a big fan of Abe Lincoln. So that should, I don't know, maybe that could impact the way you see things a little bit. These things aren't as black and white as they want to make it. And again, he's talking out of, he's just, that part he was talking out of his ass. That's just something you were told, like, that's just Red Scare propaganda. You learned it when you were a kid, you never looked into it further, and you still hold on to the belief.
But I think he, in his view, anything that's tainted by capitalism is morally tainted. And what I don't get is, I'm not sure how you can live in the world without being in some form of collusion with capitalism. If you were buying and selling things on the open market, how, I mean,
such as a book.
No, you can't. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. And that's a fact, you know? Like, you can't possibly avoid it. But this is also why it's dumb when right-wingers be like, oh, you're a socialist, you got an iPhone, blah, blah, blah. Which is stupid for so many different reasons, right? So many different reasons. But yeah, like, what am I supposed to do? Or if they're like, oh, you should just, like, why don't you give all your money away to be a... That's not socialism, bud. I'm still fucked. I'm even more fucked if I do that, right? And it helps nobody. It helps nobody. It's like, it'll help a couple people for a couple days. Like, what do? Socialism is like a, you know, a universalizing principle. It's not, I can't just give like $1 to everybody, you know, within the city of New York. Like, what do you want? Anyway.
Market exchanges are sort of the way we get out of subsistence level where we produce everything that we own. And we'll come back to that in a minute too. But I mean, that's basically the reason, Sean, is, I mean, he would like to see the capitalist system dismantled and replaced with something different, something that he called, what's the term he used?
I need some
private
sounds.
What do you say? Private
we'll come back to that
resources.
system. Yeah.
But that, but the tension, I think, is that if you're going to deconstruct something, you have to reconstruct it too. And it's pretty heavy on deconstructing market systems and pretty light on what's going to take its place. And so we'll come back to that.
You're right, on page 63, he says, even the Democrats are always in practice in some amount of collusion with capitalism. So capitalism is the ultimate bad guy, the cause of suffering.
I don't know like what these quotes are all about, and it's not the best way to put it if that's all that's there, but they could just be like the one-liner that they're pulling out that they think sums everything up. So it might not really be their fault. But what's wrong with the Democrats from a more left-wing perspective is that they do the bidding of capital owners and they're not concerned with working people and the poor. They act like they are. They sometimes say they want to be on that side and support workers. They do symbolic gestures, but where is the policy? You know, where are the new laws and where are the provisions and the things that you promise to bring to us? And they don't come because they're beholden to the same people that the Republicans are in many, many cases. Now, I wouldn't say it's everyone. There are degrees. It is a lot of the Democratic Party, but there are some people that I think, even if I, don't agree with them on everything, are, they're not terrible. Let's put it that way. They're a lot better than what we've had in my lifetime. And that's the way that I would put it. And some of those people, most of those people are not anti-capitalist because we do live in America, right? So they may think that this, laissez-faire bullshit has gone way too far and want to rein it in. But that means we're on the same page, even if, at this point, I think we need to rein it in even harder.
In the world. And so he says Biden, as I expected, was horrible. And so, by the way, his critique of Biden helps us understand what he means by the left. He says he offered unqualified support for Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. So being on the left is completely, seemingly abandoning and critiquing Israel. Really
It's not an abandonment of Israel, though. See, this is the thing, too. It's an assumption. It's something that is broadly taught within the evangelical conservative church. They are taught from a very young age to be Zionists. And there's money involved, whether they like it or not, in the promotion of this idea. Not in individual churches or anything like that, right? But in, they're in the media that they consume. And it's been there forever. It was one of the first things. The stuff we were watching on the last episode of the show from Chuck Missler, we're talking about things right around that subject, dealing with what is the fate of Israel, these end time moments. How is the Dome of the Rock going to be moved and the third temple put back there, at which it needs to be, so that, the abomination of desolation can occur. And along with all that stuff comes, we need to support Israel. We can never not support Israel. And this conflation of Zionism with Judaism that is such a booster for anti-Semitism. It's really not, I don't know. It's terrible. They're trained to think like this, though. And they, I think, are probably doing more harm than they realize. I don't think guys like this are anti-Semites, but I think that their way of thinking is anti-Semitic, whether they realize it or not. I mean, in the end, they think all the Jews, except for the 144,000 that are in Israel when Christ comes back, are just going to hell. So, and they don't seem to have much of a problem.
Strong climate change policies, forgiving billions of dollars in student loans. These are the kind of things he holds up Bernie Sanders, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar as kind of brave and constantly fighting the right kinds of battles. So
true,
that's the leftism that he's leaning into.
It's not Marxist-Leninism. It's not Marxist-Leninism. It's Bernie Sanders, It's not Marxist-Leninism. So again, it's like Bernie Sanders is not far left if we're talking, global politics. Not at all. He's maybe someone with aspirations to be like another FDR, but if he could ever get that done, that would be incredible. And that's about as far as I think it goes, at least from the vantage point I have right now. So, it's weird. I guess I'll let him talk. Maybe he's not anti Bernie Sanders, but most of these guys are.
Has a very healthy net worth.
Of course, yeah. Separate issue.
Oh, no, it's not. Yeah, exactly. Because socialism is not a poverty cult. That's why. It doesn't matter. He is rich, and he still pushes for these policies, right? He's not the richest of the rich, but he still pushes for these policies, right? He pushes for tax increases on himself. So, you know what I mean? On people like him. And he's willing to pay for it. And he puts his ass on the line. So that's just being principled, That's being principled. That's what that is. There's no problem with him. I have zero problem with him having that kind of money. Again, most of it was from writing a book anyway. But it does not matter how much money you have right now, because what matters is what you're doing with it. And I don't mean giving it away, because that would be the absolute dumbest thing you could do. You have to be realistic. You have to understand that you live in a capitalist society. And if you want to work within the system to bring about change, then you have to be smart about the way that you work the system, right? You have to stay principled, right? And not be a fucking dumbass. And this just shows how dumbass Republicans are most of the time, because it's like, oh, then why don't you just give all your money away? Yeah, that would be great. Yep, then there would be socialism.
Fair enough, but
incredible.
Really nice.
Based on capitalism, he does. Okay, so how do you? There was a statement in here that he made. Let me see. It's on page 24. I'm really curious you're taking this, because you've written a lot on capitalism. He says, it is now at least possible for a person to say, write a book for a major Christian publisher that says, why not consider socialism? Now, this is Erdmann, so it's a little broader than, say, like a Baker or a Zondervan or, a Harvest House publishers, but it's a Christian publisher. Is this new, and does that surprise you?
Well, I would have expected a different publisher.
Oh,
on this. I would
Meaning
have expected something like Orbis or Mary Knoll,
Okay.
which are the Catholic publishers that have been advocates of
that's
liberation theology around the world. So that's the part. The imprint was a bit of a surprise to me. Although I'm not surprised that Christian publishers are publishing it, because, as we mentioned several times before, there's this.
All right, I might have to take something back just in case. I don't know. Earlier, I was like, this guy must be talking out of his ass because he clearly doesn't know Marx because of what he said. Maybe he does. We'll see. We'll see if he says any more fucking dumbass shit. But maybe he does. But then I would just be confused as to why he would think, like, what should Marx have called it in order for you to not think of it as a pejorative to call it capitalism? Because it's just a name, and also I think maybe you didn't mean to do it, but in this little video here, you're insinuating that he was like 100% against the capitalism in every way, and he's like the anti-capital. But that's not true. So.
Fascination with socialism among millennials and Gen Z today that did not exist among, my baby boomer generation. And part of the reason for that is because, Gen Z, I think, has a very fading memory, if at all, of what life was like in Eastern Europe under communism, where socialism was tried. I mean, socialism was tried in Cuba, North Korea, Soviet Union, China, all sorts of places.
Okay, right. Little history, if you didn't know, from Pastor Doobies, but we're gonna keep it short. So a lot of you probably know because you're smart out there, but communism, socialism didn't exist in a vacuum. In fact, it never has. And the United States was never going to let anyone in our hemisphere do socialism, right? And we stamped that out, right? And if we didn't fully stamp it out, we left it with embers and surrounded it with no hope for more kindling, because we blockade it, more or less, right? And the USSR did fall, right? And it did have its faults, and no one should be afraid to talk about the faults and the problems and hope to do better. But to act like socialism has never worked it's a dumb man's argument. Come up with something a little like more intelligent, right? Because also it's like, how can you in what sense has capitalism worked, right? It's clearly not working for most Americans right now, even if they can't put a name on it. It's the reason why people are suffering here. It's the reason why so many people live paycheck to paycheck in America. Can't afford their health care. Things keep getting worse and worse and worse, right? People are being pushed more and more to the edge, daily. It's crazy. It's bad for people, and it is capitalism that's doing it to them, whether they know it or not. So my point is, if the trend continues, if this sort of consolidation of wealth gets even more worse, and people can't even afford like the basics, which is every day, as I said, more and more this kind of shit is happening with no obvious path towards any plan even of getting things fixed here, other than deport as many people as possible and kidnap the leaders of foreign countries in order to just give oil apparently to our oil companies, right? Because it doesn't matter about me or you, and we're not going to get shit. We're not getting anything. So yeah, like eventually it's going to drive us off a cliff, whether we call it capitalism or not. It is what it is, and it's getting worse. So, I don't care. Like it just, to me, when I look at this, I'm like, this is just fantasy world that these guys live in. and it's just excuse after excuse to avoid like basic things that even if it's not socialism, right? Other countries have universal health care, universal health coverage, right? Other countries have that. They're fucking fine. They're fine. They're fine. It's great. It's better than ours, and they know it for a fact. But these guys, you know what the first thing they'll say if I say that? They'll say, no, other people in other countries, they can't stand their health care. And it's like, no, you've been duped. They, like every other country on earth, have criticisms and concerns based on their experiences with their healthcare system. But comparatively to ours, theirs is better. And it's okay. Of course they're going to have criticisms. They're never going to have a perfect healthcare system, but it's better than our shit is. Like, it's just better. Go watch the videos where they ask people on the street in like England how much they think it costs to ride in an ambulance in the United States of America, because they don't pay like anything. I don't think it's anything. If anything, it's like a little copay, like $20, right? Like we pay for something, right? They don't pay. And then those videos, and these are from 10, 15 years ago. I don't even know what it is right now. But like 800 to a G, their minds are blown. Because they just get that shit. You know, they just get that shit. That's just part of the deal for living there. And they're not unsuccessful. They're not dead, right? And China, you can't even make that argument about China. China has done that in other sectors as well. But it is not, you know, government controlled everything. There's not a position of every single fucking thing, like little business that exists on the street. You know, there is regular smaller commerce that takes place, right? But because of certain things that they do, the cost of living is substantially cheaper for everybody. So you can't make that argument either. Well, I don't know what's going to happen, but do we get to say if the United States falls that capitalism has never worked? Do we get to say that? Because like really we're all that there is. We're the only people that are as radical as we are, or we're like no one is as radical as we are, right? Except for other fascist regimes that we prop up around the world. So what do you talk like there's nothing you can say that and it's like, all right, fine. But you also call everything socialism that isn't you know, exactly what our corporate overlords want to happen. So things are going to keep getting worse. Like, I'm sorry to tell you that, and call it what you will. You're just ushering yourself towards like the closest thing to hell that there is. Because there's not a real
every place that's been tried. It's been accompanied with tyranny for one, and economically, it's proven to be disastrous. And the reason for that is because the state can't read the mind.
Even if that were true, right? Even if that were true, that it was always accompanied by authoritarianism, that there's never been, you know, a democratic election won by a socialist or something like that. That's obviously not true, right? They have democratically won. There have certainly been authoritarian regimes. We know this, right? That's very obvious. No problem just saying, yeah, that's a fact. But I don't think it's really arguable that China is being very successful right now as far as nation states go within their home. Now, do they have problems? Is there repression of speech and certain things like that? Yes, right? But sometimes that's what people want too, right? Like maybe Chinese culture, I'm not going to pretend to be any kind of expert. I'm a dummy, but it is okay for them to have a form of socialism that fits better with other aspects of their culture that they appreciate, that have already like kind of been there. You know, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. And America, part of our thing here is we are a very diverse country, right? We are. And we like our freedom of speech. I like being able to say that the president might have sucked the other president off. You know, I like to say, like, fuck you, Donald Trump, right? Or fuck you, Joe Biden. Everybody loves to say this shit. I'm, like, about it. And we all love it. We wouldn't want that right taken away, right? And you can't do that in China. But on the other hand, right, like, they got a lot better shit than we do. Like, we're living in a third world country, more or less, compared to those lucky people over there. So, I don't know. Like, we can kind of take some aspects of it that we like. I know this is a radical idea. Take some things that are working, right? That are working for people, not just working, right? Not working for Donald Trump or working for the Epstein elite class, working for us, for regular ass working people, right? Then we should take that and do it. I don't care what it's called. I don't give a fuck what it's called, right? Do that shit. Just go do it, because it actually makes shit better, right? And when that works, and when it works, it will work. When it works, try something fucking else. It's not really that fucking radical. It's not that hard. It's not.
Minds of individuals who make their preferences known by the exchanges that they make in the marketplace. The state can't figure out what's best for individuals apart from those market realities.
You're absolutely right. You know, in China, we don't have 45 different kinds of lettuce to choose from, right? I don't have the choice of which insurance company I want to join into, because like, I'm limited by the providers in my area, and I need to, and I'm also dictated what insurance I must have by my boss, right? Like, what kind of freedom? Freedom to do what? The right are masters of this kind of shit. Freedom to do what? Freedom to be enslaved to the fucking sins? To the sins, right? What do you want to be free to do? To fuck other people over? Is that what you're doing? You want to be free to do that? Probably. I think that's what they're looking to do. A lot of these, like, that's what I see when I talk to or listen to conservative Christians. They say, they always make these silly arguments about freedom and stuff. And it's like, it's not even really about that, because yeah, I want freedom, but there's places where I draw the line, right? And there's places where you draw the line. So the issue is, why do we draw the line here? And you're not having a productive conversation if you're constantly trying to pretend that the other person, like, believes the opposite of you. Like, you're the one who wants free speech and they want to stop it, right? And then the first thing you do is try to, like, ban something that I would agree with, you know, maybe like abuse material or something like that. It's like, oh, now you want to ban that. Well, that's good. You're just showing you don't believe in unlimited free speech. Everybody draws a line. So it's disingenuous. Like, and I'm not even saying people are necessarily doing it on purpose. It's like, that's the kind of way you're trained to do apologetics in conservative Christianity. So I don't know, but fucking learn it. It's dumb.
And that's why the markets reflect our
Thank
values.
you for all the
for
viewers
better, for
today,
worse.
too,
Sometimes
by the
it
way.
reflects them for worse.
All platforms.
And
you guys
I think
rock.
He's focused on
Feel
the
free
way
to ask questions. I'll do
reflect
Ask the
our values
Pastor.
for worse.
Reverend Doobies is always ready to,
this is, I think, quite consistent
say what you want to hear.
with some of what we've seen, the Gen Z fascination
It is.
with socialism.
And there's a difference between a Gen Z fascination with it and a Christian publisher opening the door to socialism, making a case, or to a book making a case for socialism. So to me, it's a sign that I'll be looking for more to.
No. See? Notice how he said that. It's a mistake or it's a difference, and he's saying it's negative, right? What happened? For a Christian publisher to promote socialism. Why? Socialism is an economic arrangement in a society, and it is not in any way antithetical to Christianity and to Christian principles at all. I'm sorry. I'm not saying the Bible teaches it. It doesn't. It doesn't teach capitalism either. But one is closer to the ethics of Jesus than the other, and it's not fucking capitalism. I'm sorry. That's just dumb talk. And he's acting like it's a heresy. And again, that is why, you know what I'm going to say, that is why these guys are heretics. Yep. They're heretics. They're insane people. The Bible doesn't pick an economic system. It's concerned about the justice in your economy, which is, as I've said many times on this episode already, the flip side of the coin of love. And there is no love where there is no justice.
See if we see a normalization in that direction. Which I'm all for arguing ideas, but I have some real issue we're going to get to.
So many.
With some of the arguments here. So what's your take on this? Is it possible for somebody to be a leftist in the way he characterized it in the book and a Christian, or are they mutually contradictory positions?
I'll answer that, and then I want to sharpen the question.
Okay, good.
Because I'd rather answer a different question.
Okay.
And the reason is because I think the Bible is clear that you believe in the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved.
Okay.
Nothing about, political, economic, endowments of that. So I don't think anything in here disqualifies him from naming the name of Jesus and being saved. Okay. I
respect that. It's interesting because now I want to hear what the McDowell guy has got to say, because that's good. I mean, there's LGBT affirming in here. You know what I'm saying? So even if he's not, I'm about that. We have to talk about that kind of thing in the church. I know it's not what LGBT people would want to hear, but you know what? People hate us for all kinds of reasons. I don't really care as long as it's not affecting, my life, my liberty, my freedom, and I feel the same about everyone else. So, I mean, you want to be weird, be weird, I guess. Just don't enforce it on everybody else. So that's fine. It's when people are, well, let's see how the other guy is first. He may just demonstrate.
Is being a leftist in the way he describes consistent with faithfulness to Scripture?
Okay.
Or consistent with a Christian worldview? And that's a different question.
Yes.
And I think the answer to that is probably not. Not to mention.
Okay. All right. Now I'm not sure, because now I'm not sure what that. I feel like that's what's the difference? I'm glad you say I think he believes that the guy can say, he's not saying he's not a Christian, right? Or is he questioning it? That made it confusing to me, because now I feel like I have to say something about his this worldview shit. I'll let him say more, but this is ridiculous.
LGBTQ stuff we've already talked about.
Yeah.
But I think there's just some problematic things in the view that leftism takes, mainly on economics, that I think run counter to the notions of human beings being created with freedom in the image of God.
No, I don't understand why it's so hard to get this. Well, I mean, I do. It's called propaganda, and America is the most propagandized country on the planet. So freedom for who, right? Because the thing that goes along with this kind of freedom and liberty always with these guys is the subject of merit, right? But how merit works, they're always quite a bit dodgy on that, right? Because has Donald Trump merited his position? Because to me, he was handed up wealth. He was handed a name. He did certain things. He failed a lot, but he had friends. And due to his position in society, was consistently able to keep himself in the spotlight and ended up being president of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, and you know, everything else that goes along with this fucking shit right now. But like, it's hard for me to say he earned shit, right? If you're out on the golf course, like, you're not, I mean, what's earning, right? Because some people would say, oh, sometimes it's just like your brain is what does it, right? One idea that happens to be highly desired means that you merit an enormous amount of wealth that gives you the ability to influence the decisions of our politicians in ways that benefit you and hurt other people, right? I mean, like, there's all these these intertwinings. No one makes anything alone at all, right? And there are certainly people who, you know, don't contribute a lot to society, and there are people who contribute more than others to society, but there are so many other factors that make it more or less like impossible to say who's really earned something or not. But I will say this, if you've spent more time on golf courses than I've spent, you know, working 25 years, 40 to 50 hours a week every day, doing boring, tedious, but necessary shit for someone else, like, who really works harder? You know? Who really works harder? The woman with 2 kids and is going to school, working a full-time job and a part-time job at the same time as trying to be a parent, right? Who already started and came from like pretty rough circumstances themselves? Or the person who inherited a body shop, right? And didn't really work, but learned the business and, you know, never really had to do much work, just hung out a lot. And then daddy gives them the business, right? Did that person work a lot? Because at that point, it doesn't matter who works more or who worked more, right? And the person who's in the second position that I just talked about, because of the position they're in, because they have a level of authority within the capitalist structure, and they have power over you, whether you're going to have, you know, income the next week or health insurance, right? They do have more power in society. They can wield it basically however they want, and it's on the basis of how much money they have. And again, in that situation, that person didn't work for shit. That's not merit. And he has power to take freedom, the freedom for a person to have a place to live and eat food and feed their children, right? And have health insurance. He can take that freedom like that. And then you can say, well, the person can go find another job. That's not always possible. And in the best case scenario for business owners, they want it to be a tight labor market. That's the fucking goal. They want it to be so that there is an abundance of workers, so that when you complain, they can let you go and bring someone else the fuck in. That's not freedom. That's not freedom for me at all. Yes, I have the freedom if I have enough money, if my boss blesses me for one more week so that I can continue to perform and go out and have dinner. If I can go to TGI Fridays and I have the option of all of the different soft drinks that they have, you know, 15 different sodas on tap, 22 appetizers. I have my choice. So much freedom, right? But if my boss says, get up right now and come to work, or else we're going to have to find someone that's a little more dedicated than you, and I have to leave the fucking food beside, well, guess who's in charge of my life? How much fucking freedom is that? And this isn't even that much of a goddamn exaggeration, is it? I bet you many of us out there, me included, have experienced this sort of shit. That's not freedom. It's not. So when this guy's talking about, well, what about freedom? He's talking about freedom for other people to oppress people without government oversight. And that's it. That's all a corporation really is, right? That's what business owners don't want. That's what certain people in certain states don't want. They want to be the top authority. There is authority, theoretically, above them, the federal government, that could hold them accountable, who is, at least theoretically, not because of the money right now, but in a working democratic society, they are accountable to the people, to the voters, right? And they would be able to say, hey, what this company is doing here is unjust. They don't pay their workers enough to live. We are subsidizing them also. When we pay for food stamps for the employees, they don't pay enough. This is fucking our economy. And these people are making billions of dollars off of bullshit like this. We can hold them accountable. When people talk about freedom and liberty in this sense, or states' rights, what they want is they don't want that authority, the authority of the people, to be able to shut them down when they are being criminal. They don't want them to shut down, especially when they're being criminal, but they don't even want them to shut them down when it comes to saying, like, yeah, like, no, you, like, what the fuck do you mean you're not gonna pay your workers enough so that they can provide for their family? Yeah, you are. Well, I'll go out of business. Then fucking go out of business. I don't give a fuck. Go out of business. There's jobs out there for you. You know what I mean? Everything is really backwards as far as these guys are concerned. And then, I don't know, every time I just have these arguments in my mind. Because like, oh, well, then there would be no businesses. Yes, there would. Yes, there would, right? Because someone else that's more kind-hearted, someone else who has a better fucking idea than these losers who just want to rip off their workers to make money, someone with a better idea will come along and fill the need. And if there is an excessive need that is not being met by the markets, the government can intervene and say, we will do it, even if we have to do it at a loss. It makes sense, and it's better for society for us to have this right now. And perhaps we can improve some things later. Maybe times will change eventually, and we can reconsider what is going on right now, but it just makes sense to do this now because it's an actual need, so we're going to fucking do it. And we're going to make it happen no matter what it is. And it doesn't really matter because we're the federal government, and we fucking make the money. And when we appropriate it, that is how it exists. And we can make everything okay because we have full control over that. But that's what these guys don't want. That's what they don't want. They don't. And for someone like these guys, I doubt, I don't know for sure that these guys are that wealthy. Like, you wouldn't be affected negatively by socialist policies. You'd probably get more freedom, unless you own a corporation, I guess, or like you're a dick to your employees, but
with dignity. And Sean, everywhere this has been tried, those things they've just been wiped out. And there's a funny thing about utopias. There's only one time where utopia is not going to have tyranny. And that's when the Lord returns and consummates his kingdom.
Again, there is no good utopia except ours. It's perfect. Yeah.
And we will have a utopia with a benevolent king.
Same kind of thing too. Like, it's this whole idea of like Christ as king. You need to come under his authority, and the secular world, secular democracy, when they criticize that, they'll say, well, they want to put the government above everything, but we want to put God above everything. And it's like, no, it's like we're both putting a government over something. You just claim that yours is from God, and we're humble enough to say, we should probably ask everyone what they think because we're not fucking gods. And you guys are like, no, we speak for God, literally.
Without tyranny or coercion. Now, the other thing that I think is problematic with leftism is the view of private property. And I think private property, particularly the way John Locke articulated it, and it was very influential to the Founding Fathers. Locke's view was that the view of private property was an entailment of our rights over our own lives and our own bodies, because he saw the fruit of our labor as an extension of our right over our own body.
All right, I'm not gonna. Yeah, I know some of Locke stuff, but like very minimal. I'm sure this man knows more than I do, so I'm just gonna accept, what he said here about Locke and private property. I'll take it for granted. My response, though, would be, well, just like with the Bible, this, was quite a different context than it is now when Locke was writing. It was very early on. And I don't know, does Locke make a distinction between, like, private property and personal property? Because every leftist I know makes that distinction, right? Not wanting private property doesn't mean I can't have a house, right? Like a house that's mine, that nobody's taking away, right? It doesn't mean I can't have a lawnmower that's mine. We don't have community lawnmowers, community gardens, community everything. That's a caricature. Like, that's not what's going on. Private property is specifically talking about private individuals or companies owning the means of production, right? You can't, that's what needs to be stopped. It's not that you can't have it. And I mean, it can work in several different ways. I think China, they do kind of I wouldn't call it rent. It's like a lease for a lifetime, more or less, right? On a place. And if you want to keep staying there, you can keep staying there. But it's a way of stopping. It's a way of, making things more meritocratic, because you can't just give away all your wealth without, penalty to your children, right? Which is fine, because again, that's not about freedom, right? Whose freedom, right? If you accumulate enough wealth, you can fuck the freedom of everyone else. So that's something that must be considered. But it doesn't have to be completely policed. We don't have to be pocket watching everybody, right? There can be levels to some extent, just limits, right? A floor that no one's going below, and a ceiling that no one's going above, right? And the government, a democratic government, makes and guides those decisions, right? And the people have a right to decide what the lines are for what can and can't happen, right? So would there be in this situation, in a real democracy, situations where people feel like their freedoms are being taken away? Yes, because there's no such thing as absolute freedom. It doesn't exist. It's a fantasy, and you know it if you think about it, right? You know it if you think about it. There is no such thing as full-on freedom. There are things that happen right now to me, beyond all of the stuff I'm talking about in the day-to-day, which to me is honestly some of the most important, for my day-to-day, the stuff I think about all the time. But capital, I had two thoughts in my mind, and I got them wrapped together like a dumbass. It'll come back to me. We should keep watching this anyway.
Of course,
I'm going way too slow, even though I have it on high speed. What's up, everybody out there in all the chats?
So the
Appreciate
theological
you guys.
argument is a little bit different for that.
I'll answer
but I
questions.
think Locke was onto something. And I think this is
Locke.
one of the reasons why the Bible affirms private property as being consistent with not only the ability to take care of the poor, but consistent with...
Again, no. The concept, John Locke's concept of private property didn't exist in the Bible, right? If you're asking if people had personal possessions, they did. Yeah. And in a socialist society, would people have personal possessions? They would. So, yeah, no.
With a view
Wrong.
of the human person as being free and created in God's image with intrinsic dignity that allows for the freedom that market systems that empower in ways that no other system has done. Now, it doesn't do it perfectly, but it does it a whole lot better than any other system that's been tried.
I think that distinction is very fair, and that was a similar distinction I was going to make. God judges somebody's heart, and we can't. Your point about if you believe in Christ,
yeah, I think I misunderstood it. I gave that other guy way too many props at the beginning. No, it's more of the very condescending, like, well, they claim Jesus, and I don't know their heart, but if I did, they ain't going to heaven.
I'll be saved. That's like a minimal Christian salvation. So denying the right to private property doesn't mean you lose your salvation. I believe in radical climate change, or some of the other things that he talks about here are not salvific issues. The question is, do they line up with a Christian understanding of the world? That's where we would take serious issue. The thing that does give me concern is there's just flirting with Marxism at times, and Marxism is directly antithetical to the Christian worldview. It is a materialist worldview, period.
Yeah,
and of course, Christianity is not. Has a fundamentally different view of what it means to be human, the nature of what sin is. So he doesn't call himself a Marxist and embrace all of that, but the flirting with that, I would just say, gives me concern on that level. He doesn't lay out exactly what the gospel is, talks about grace, being a sinner. It still feels like a left-leaning kind of solidarity, heaven on earth kind of gospel.
Yo, materialism also, not antithetical. Bro, did you guys not already bring up liberation theology? Pretty sure you did. You know what that is? Marxist theology. What does it do? Material analysis. Weird, right? Right? And to me, even though liberation theology is a materialist theology, it is far more spiritual than anything you guys could ever offer. You know why? You know why? Because you use what you call spirituality to cover or hide material conditions. The spirit that flows out of a liberation theology, on the other hand, is one that pays attention to the plight of the poor and oppressed, of the broken and the downtrodden. And from that point, it recognizes the Spirit's work and what their role is as image bearers of God. And it is that Spirit that guides solidarity and Christ-likeness. See, if you don't pay, I'm riffing off James Cone here, but you guys like to talk about the substitutionary atonement, how Jesus died on the cross for you so that you can have everlasting life, and you sing songs about the cross. And you look at the cross and you see the man who was turned over by the fundamentalist religionists of his day to the imperial power, the global imperial power of Rome, to be hung on a tree until he died. You sing songs about it, you talk about it a lot, but if you can do all that, but you can look at a lynching tree in apartheid southern United States of America, the Jim Crow South, and see a black man hanging on a tree with a crowd of white racists standing around him, right? And not see in that man hanging your savior and know what you're supposed to do, then my friend, you are not a Christian. You are a Roman. You are a Pharisee. And I mean those in the worst senses, not in the they're not meant to be derogatory towards actual Pharisees. That's all I mean. But for real, that's
but
some
that
real
might
shit.
just be a lack of clarity on his part that he clarifies somewhere else, and I haven't taken the time to look at that. But in principle, I think your distinction is fair. So he defines capitalism, and I want to read it for us. And I just, again, super curious if you agree with his take on this. He says, let me just read it for us. He says, by capitalism, I mean the social system in which the means of production, the stuff that makes all our stuff, which includes land, equipment, intellectual property, like patents and the like, and stock that gives you a controlling interest in these things, is allowed to belong to individual people who have a legal right to pass it on to their children, sell to other individual people, or whatever else they might take a mind to do with it. That's it. That's all I mean. Is that a fair description of capitalism?
No.
No? Okay. To not mince words.
Well,
I'd go deeper too.
There's quite a bit more to it. Now, in part 2 of this, we're going to offer a moral case.
That's right.
For free markets, and we're going to use the term free markets in that. But
that's so funny because I didn't know that Jesus loved free markets more than oppressed people.
And there's just a lot more to it than that. Now, I think private property is central to that. But
the other thing about free markets too is like we all know this too. They create desire for products in you, right? Consumerism is a necessary aspect of it, right? Beyond just like, the things you need, you're provoked in commercials, ads, whatever, or just by celebrities wearing shit, or by different shows to it's like, oh, I want to have this, I need to have that, and you buy all this useless ass shit that you never fucking use, right? Or you use a couple times and you get rid of it, and I don't know, I mean, beyond the fact that it's just gathering up so much fucking waste, it's like you're being duped when you do that, right? You're being duped. So you guys, by promoting this kind of stuff, are promoting people just like getting duped.
The problem with I think the view that he's taking is that, I think we have there can be limits on how much you pass on to your heirs. That's why we have inheritance taxes, to limit some of that.
Yeah.
Which I don't think is unfair.
Okay.
Those are avoided by the wealthiest, though.
And we've got
tricks.
A good
Buy, borrow, die.
That we've known for a long time, very, very well to do.
BBD.
Who basically said, I'm not giving anything inheritance to my kids because I don't want them to be in a place where they're not earning their own way on their own. I commend them for that. But
again, though, but that's like, that doesn't do that's not doing socialism, right? I don't think the principal thing to do is if my parents left me something, that I should turn it down. It wouldn't do anything. It would not create socialism. It wouldn't do anything. It's not socialism in any respect. It's an act of an individual. It doesn't serve the collective at all because it wouldn't be much, right? Or if I left it to my own child or something like that, it would not, I don't know. What do you want me to say? It doesn't do it. That's not the point. It's that, to me, isn't even commendable, right? I think if you're sincere, if that person he's talking about was sincere, they wouldn't not give an inheritance to their children. They would work to pass laws that make it that tax inheritance more, or that close loopholes that allow the richest of the rich to avoid, right, paying those taxes. You know what I mean?
Sean, what happens when you don't have private property is really the problem. Because one of the things that our listeners may not be aware of, and our students are not being taught in their history courses, is when the earliest settlers came to the United States in the Massachusetts Bay Colony, they tried socialism for the first year or two, and they nearly starved to death. And it wasn't until they adopted basically a regimen of recognizing private property and allowed people to have an interest in their own interests economically that they began to flourish, and they began to produce enough food to actually feed themselves. And they began to produce other things that they needed by virtue of these mutually beneficial exchanges. And I think the other reason that private property
I gotta let him
matters
talk for a little bit here. I've been interrupting too much.
You can't produce everything that you need on your own. You have to have others producing other things, and we trade and exchange based on the things that we're good at. there's a video that was done years ago called iPencil.
Oh yeah, it's fascinating.
And it's a story about a person who tries to make a pencil all by himself.
That's right.
And it's this Herculean task that if he tried to put it to scale, pencils would probably cost $10 to $20 a piece. And it showed how unrealistic it was to think that we can have the things that we have without a vibrant, dynamic, market-based system. The follow-up to that, by the way, is called iSmartphone.
Oh,
I encourage our viewers to take a look at both of those videos. They're very enlightening about.
Again, it's not antithetical. Commerce is not antithetical to socialism, right? Again, think of it more in terms of limits, right? Limits that keep things fair. Much stronger limits than we have now. Like, to me, starting up a small business, not a problem, right? Go do it. Like, you find something that works in your community, like, you go do that. That's fine. There's a point at which, though, like, no, you don't, like, it's too big. And so I can be clear, like, I don't know a single motherfucker that's even remotely in the realm of being impacted significantly financially by anything that any kind of socialist or democratic socialist who has any sort of movement in the United States of America could bring. No effect. So it's really like, to me, it shows some of the propagandizing, like the work that propaganda does. It's like, man, like, you're just voting. So, like, I know you don't realize this sometimes, but you're like voting for things that are just gonna make shit worse for you, worse for everybody else. And like, some people will probably die because of the way that we're going, people that didn't have to die, and you're not gonna benefit from it, like, at all, like, really at all. Yeah, sure, maybe you get to go on one more vacation a year, right? But you also have to, like, pay for 28 Ubers when you could have, like, high-speed rail or, like, a solid subway system in whatever city you go visit. You know what I mean? And save money that way. There's always exchanges, right? The problem in America is that our government is so owned by the very people who want to own the means of production and control the means of production. It's so owned by them that our politicians don't get anything done for us that actually, like, feels like a useful, something that's actually, like, something that we want. Let me put it this way. I have no problem paying taxes. My problem is that when I pay taxes, they generally don't do anything for me. Right? They don't do shit for me. What do I get out of it, right? Because at least to this point, I've been relatively healthy. I have work. I have enough money to have a home, like things like that, right? Like, I'm okay, but that doesn't mean I'll always be okay. And other than that, like, what am I getting from my government? Personally, not much. And it's not that our government can't do it. And it's not the problem. The problem isn't that I'm getting taxed. The problem is that when I get taxed, that money goes, like, right back to my boss, not my literal boss all the time, but, it goes back to the very people who continue to control the means of production and thus control how much money I get to make, how I get to live my life on a day-to-day basis. The government doesn't affect me really at all, other than if I get, like, a speeding ticket or some shit, or maybe if you needed to get a permit or something like that, right? But even that stuff, like, there's reasons for it. There can be stupid shit involved. There can also be reasons, right? And it's just not all about everything that you get for yourself. And I would have thought that Christians would be, about that sort of thing, right? Like, it's not all about you. Stop thinking about your own personal needs. But the way these guys think and the way that they promote, right-wing ideology and capitalist economics, it's very clear that they only care about themselves, and they've found a quote-unquote biblical theological excuse to just, like, let people starve.
what's involved.
Yeah.
And die.
But none of that happens if we don't recognize a right to private property.
Jay Richards talks about that in his book, God, Greed, and Money, in which he says you got to get the right material. You got to transport the right material. You got to weed it together. You got to shape it. You got to market it. Like, there's so much. The whole point is that pencil seems simple, but it's a lot of cooperation that takes place that one individual can't do by themselves.
Right. Now, to be fair, I wouldn't call that community.
Okay.
Like some want to do that. I think cooperation is the right thing. I mean, think about, John Stossel did this years ago in a video he made entitled Greed. A great piece on ABC News. And he goes into the grocery store and he said, this is my steak I'm bringing home for dinner. How did this get here? And he goes back all the different steps and all the different people who had to do their jobs and be involved in order to bring the most basic food to market. And there were about like 20 different steps that were involved and all sorts of different companies that were involved, each seeking their own interest while at the same time benefiting
for the collective good and his enjoyment of the steak, of course. I'm sure he enjoyed it.
Right.
So we're going to come back, like you said, in part 2 and make a...
Now, see, this is bullshit too, because monopolization ruins competition, right? I don't have a problem with competition necessarily. I do agree. At times, competition is going to make someone to make a better product. Competition can make someone, pay their employees more. Competition can do certain things that actually can benefit the economy. But American capitalism is not about that shit at all. Sorry, I feel like it said I got a message, but I don't know where I got a message. I don't know how that works. I'm looking. We'll see. I don't know how to figure that out. That's weird. Now I can't find it. I apologize. Someone left me a message. Send it again, I guess. Shit. I forget what I was saying now, though. That distracted me. It's okay, but...
Case for...
I'll come back.
Not capitalism, market... What's the term used again?
Market economy.
Market economies. But there's 3 kind of big objections that he levels, and maybe just kind of give us your quick take on this. And one of them that he writes on page 68 is that he says, capitalism doesn't generate dynamic innovation, in part because people are just one step away from financial ruin. And so if people had more...
I was talking about competition. That's what I was talking about, right? Competition. This monopolization doesn't breed competition. And also, look what just happened in Venezuela, right? Now, competition would mean, okay, you have a nation state, right? Venezuela, that has nationalized its oil, and it wants to sell it and deal with it how it wants to deal with it on the global capital market, right? That's how it's dealing with it, doing their trade, whatever. The United States, well, we don't fucking like that. So what do? We kidnap their leader and try to make sure that someone favorable to our companies, who will let our companies, not Americans, not America, Exxon, Chevron, go in there and, take their oil, more or less, right? Now, I don't know what the arrangement will be. I'm sure that certain leaders will get kickbacks if they cooperate, things like that, but the profits are going to those companies. And if you think it's going to benefit you or me in any way, I got a bridge to sell you. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this other thing he's talking about also is ruined by the fact of monopolization. So this is where my argument comes in. Call it socialism, call it whatever. There needs to be limits, bottom and top. Nobody goes below this, nobody goes above this. And then within those bounds, there is freedom, right? There is freedom, because there is no freedom without the law.
Of kind of a social security that was built into them and had more insurance, then they'd be dynamic and innovative. And capitalism undermines that. And he gives the example, actually, I thought it was interesting. He says Jonas Salk, when he wanted to get the polio, not to become a billionaire, but he just wanted to give the property rights away as an example of how this can be done for the collective good. What's your take on that?
Well, I think what he says is true in the developing world, but not in the West, where, and I would call it crony capitalism, that's being tried in a lot of the developing world. mainly sub-Saharan Africa. And I don't think the average person is one step from financial ruin.
Bro,
I think they're...
No, that's because you're dumb, dude. You don't, like, it's like 70-something people in the United States live paycheck to paycheck, dude. People are, especially younger people, younger than us, younger than you certainly, but even younger than me, saddled with student debt. People who have had their lives ruined by medical debt. This is ridiculous, bro. Like, this is just complete ignorance. You don't pay attention, right? I don't think you pay attention to this stuff. I don't think you do. I just choose not to believe that people are struggling. Okay, buddy. Okay. Yeah. All right. That's why, the economy, never a matter of interest to voters in America. You know what I mean? Never, ever been a matter of interest.
There are more people living paycheck to paycheck. That probably is true. And it is true that, people do get bankrupted by cancer treatments, for example, if they're not insured.
Sure.
Now, there's a lot more discussion about that, but capitalism, there's no doubt, and the empirical evidence is beyond dispute that capitalism generates dynamic innovations. Now, there's just that. I mean, his statement about capitalism not doing that is just patently false. Because we can go on and on and on about the innovations that market-based systems that allow people to benefit from the fruit of their labors and from taking risks. And we forget entrepreneurs are the ones who provide the vast majority of jobs.
Yeah, no. All right. Again, entrepreneurs, not like they can exist in socialism, all right? They can exist in socialism. It's bullshit to say that is completely off the table. No one is ever saying that. Also, the whole issue of labor, again, maybe I'm gonna have to go back. I don't think this dude's very familiar with Marx. I think he has a superficial understanding of Marx. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll eat my words at some point in the future, but right now, that is not happening. Because Marx's whole issue, and he would deal with this if he thought it was wrong, because he's making the claim, he's saying that capitalism allows you to make money off your own labor. The heart of Marx's critique at the beginning of Das Kapital is that it's the labor theory of value, right? It's how labor creates value, but capitalism obscures that fact, and it is how profit is made, which is the exploitation of your labor and the theft of your labor by capital. So the whole point in Marx is capitalism is a fraud. It says, oh yeah, you're making money because of your labor and you work hard. But if you really take a closer look at what's going on here, while labor truly is what produces value, your employer is using your labor to extract his money. So instead of you making what your labor produces, in return, the owner gets a cut of your labor. And you could say, well, there's materials and things like that. No, not materials. Materials are the cost of doing business as well. The capitalist, the owner, must pay for the materials, right? And must pay for the labor. He pays for both. And that comes out to equal, to put it in the simplest terms, the cost of the item, right? That's the cost of the item. So where does profit come from? Well, it comes from, this is what it costs to make it, so I am going to exploit consumers by charging them more than it is actually worth. Or I guess is what it really is. At the same time, the flip side of that coin is, if someone is willing to pay that much for it, if many people are willing to pay that, then that, in our societal sense, is how much that item is worth. And all that the owner contributed was the materials. They didn't labor. And where's the value come from? It comes from the labor. And it only comes from the labor. And the only reason that the capitalist has any involvement in this transaction at all is because he owns the means of production. He owns the materials that are needed to make the product and the item, which gives him an unfair advantage and says this item doesn't get to exist unless I say so. But the broader, freer thing is like, no, like one man doesn't get to decide the rest of our fate and doesn't get to steal money from me for the work that I've done. That's the point. That's the socialist point of view, if you want to call it that. What he's saying, like, no, capitalism is exploitation at its heart. And that's why it's also not immoral to tax in this system, because taxing, even though libertarians want to play like it's stealing, it's not. It's taking back what doesn't belong to them. They should have zero.
And it's companies that are under the size of 50 that produce like 75% of the jobs
not
in the United
us.
States.
To be clear, we shouldn't have zero. And I'm not even talking about workers. I'm specifically talking about taxing the private entities that control our means of production.
So without entrepreneurs being willing to take risks, and they risk it all.
They do.
And lots of entrepreneurs fail for a variety of reasons. And the ones
Mad
that
viewers
succeed
today,
often do
and I
so
love it.
spectacularly.
Thank
But
you.
remember, some of the most significant entrepreneurs, Jeff Bezos didn't make a profit for probably 15 years.
I didn't realize it was that long.
It was a long time until people trusted the internet that their financial information was going to be safe. So I think Salk, is a wonderful example of charity and altruism. Although my understanding is the people who made the COVID-19 vaccines, they did make a nice profit off of that. That was not the same kind of altruism. But
No, that's America. That's everything. That's everything. That's everything. Right? If they didn't make a profit, that would have been socialism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Wait a minute. All right. I was all caught up in myself. I need to go back like a few seconds here. I want to hear what he said about that one more time. The COVID
for a variety of
vaccines.
reasons. And the ones that succeed often do so spectacularly. But remember, some of the most significant entrepreneurs, Jeff Bezos didn't make a profit for probably 15 years.
I didn't realize it was that long.
It was a long time until people trusted the internet that their financial information was going to be safe. So I think Salk, is a wonderful example of charity and altruism.
Okay, no, it's not. Fucking entrepreneurship is not altruism. Nobody does it. Nobody is thinking about what they're doing for society until they need to make a moral argument for their existence. I'm sorry. That does not fucking happen. And you know what? Thankfully, I do talk to business owners occasionally who are just honest about that, which I fucking respect. Even if I disagree with them, at least they're not playing this fake moral bullshit. This is ridiculous. It's fucking corny. What do you think you're doing? Then if they want to do that, they know, as Karl Marx did, by the way, that their role is to extract as much labor for the least amount of money out of their employees. And the employee's role is the exact opposite, to extract as much money out of them while doing the least amount of labor. These are one of the most important contradictions of capitalism. It is a relationship that exists in capitalism, and it would not exist in other, necessarily exist at least, in other organizations of the economy, you know? So it's ridiculous. It's one of those things, like if someone actually says it, it's like, motherfucker, you don't give a fuck. You didn't start a pizza shop to bring people together, right? You didn't start a pizza shop in order to like create a bunch of jobs. You did it to make money. You did it to make money, and that's the only reason. But you have to, if you want to make enough money, exploit more people. Like, that's the only way to fucking do it, especially if you also want to work as little as possible.
Although my understanding is the people who made the COVID-19 vaccines,
here we go,
they did make a nice profit off of that. That was not the same kind of altruism. But
So Jeff Bezos, altruistic. because he created Amazon. The companies, and I'm not here to defend pharmaceutical companies, but I don't have a problem with vaccines or the COVID vaccine even. It's just like, yeah, trying to do that and make it was going to cost a lot of money. I don't have a problem with taxpayer money funding it. I would like to see the people who created it get rewarded to some extent. The corporations themselves, I could give two shits about. They shouldn't make a fucking dime. Like, honestly, like, yeah, I think so. But it doesn't matter. Like, Jeff Bezos is just as goddamn corrupt. What is this? Like, Jeff Bezos is just as corrupt. More corrupt in many respects. He doesn't care. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I should say more corrupt or not. I guess he is, because he keeps swallowing up the economy. He's terrible to fucking workers. So, you're delusional if you think he's altruistic.
Yeah, I think these are the exceptions that kind of prove the rule. Like, if you were counting numbers here, the amount of people that built businesses, like you said, that hired other people, created products, that worked for the collective good, were not motivated by these very things and would not have been motivated by these very things. So you can find an exception here or there, isn't going to set up a pattern that this will work as a whole, because like you said, it actually never has. One of the arguments he makes at least twice in here, and you see this a lot in kind of the mainstream media, is he talks about how we outlawed non-penal slavery in the U.S., but that especially in developing countries, slaves grow our chocolate, build our iPhones, work on the stadia that will host the World Cup. He says, whatever you call our economic system has not fully outgrown the slavery that attended its expansion. So,
that's fact, though. That's just straight fact.
Should we blame the U.S. for enslaving people around the world for our own greed because of capitalism?
Yeah.
Way overstated.
Yes.
And the exceptions don't make the rule. What I want to be careful about, Sean, is that we don't equate employment with enslavement. Okay? Those are two different things.
Okay.
Yes and no. Yes and no, right? Because in America, we have people that live out of their cars, right? Sometimes people live out of their cars and they work full time, but they cannot afford the rents, right? I'm not saying that this is the norm, but it happens, right? When that happens, what do you think is going on? What's the issue, right? What's the issue when they're living in their car?
And I caught glimpses of where, you know, all the examples that he cited were these extremes. You know, he didn't cite the examples that way outnumber them, about people who, you know, take jobs voluntarily, they leave them voluntarily. They're mutually beneficial exchanges. I mean, you and I, you know, we get paid for coming to teach our class. We agree to do that. It's a mutually beneficial exchange. Nobody's forcing us to do this. We can both leave these at any time we want to, though I'm hoping that neither of us do. But to equate employment with being enslaved, I think is hugely.
No. Again, though, think about, what is it like if I'm working at least 40 hours a week, right? And I'm sleeping in my car with all my belongings. I mean, fuck. Slaves had cabins, right? And I don't want to play, that's probably disrespectful in some people's minds. I'm not trying to be, and I'm not saying it's exactly the same in America, but America is not the place that you even need to fully focus on. Again, you were talking about other countries. Yeah. If it wasn't for American companies, their marketing practices, right? And the American military-industrial complex, like doing this shit in Venezuela, everything that we're doing around the globe and have done for a century, basically, not quite, 80 years. Then yeah, like, I mean, I might not be if I have a steady job, but you're also a dumbass if you don't understand that it's not as easy as just going to get another job. And that's intentional, right? I mean, people say this shit out loud, right? You know, they do. It's not a secret, right? That's the goal. I guess people that just aren't class conscious can't. They won't look at that.
Appreciate just what a labor market actually is.
I think he also does not talk about places like...
It's a whole other thing. Man, I'm never going to get through this. It's a whole different thing when you're talking about labor, though, because labor is treated differently, even though it is the most important part of, a business. It's always treated differently. Rich people, capital owners, will lobby their politicians, our politicians, to not pass or to pass laws that are less favorable to workers and more favorable to them, so that they have all leverage in negotiation. They have all leverage in everything, really. And that's the plan. They say it. They know. Everybody knows it. I don't know why anyone would be in denial that that's exactly what's going on. It's a war. It's a fucking battle. Everyone is in it. So if that is happening, then they're intentionally trying to make a tight labor market. It's also another reason why the Republicans were so pissed a couple years ago, or maybe it was last year, I don't remember. But very recently, within the last year or so, they were extraordinarily, let me think, they were pissed off. Fuck. I can't remember what it was. My apologies.
China and the actual
it'll come back to me in a moment.
Over there. And I wouldn't get, if he was right, that wouldn't get capitalist countries off the hook for what they allegedly do. I think your point still stands. But to just single this out as if it's a unique problem of capitalism is completely narrow-minded.
And I'm not giving 3 cheers for sweatshops, but I'm giving maybe 1 or 2. Because
what the fuck? What?
In the parts of the developing world where those exist, the conditions are unethical and should be illegal. But if those people don't have those jobs, those factories aren't there. John, what are their alternatives?
Bro, these people act like because something happened, it was inevitable. It's like the most stupid form of Calvinist brain I've ever seen. And I don't even know if these guys are Calvinists, but they certainly have this predestined aspect. You know what would happen if those factories weren't there? They'd figure out how to do shit on their own. People did it for thousands of fucking years, you dumb fuck. Seriously. They'd figure it out. There would be other people. What do you think, that they're incapable of coming up with ideas themselves? What do you mean? If those factories weren't there, those factories shape their economy, right? Normally what happens is, it's exactly what's going to happen in Venezuela, actually, right now, if you want to look at it. They're living how they want to live. They have a certain culture. Well, Venezuela is not the best example because, I know, Maduro, not the best dude. So I won't use that, but not that it's that far-fetched. But just so that we don't have to use Maduro as an example, let's use the Native Americans, the indigenous people of America, as an example. Might have talked about this a little bit last week too, but they had a culture, they operated in a certain way. There's different tribes. Maybe they were a little more nomadic at times. They dwelt in regions and things like that, but different cultures even amongst different tribes of the Native Americans. As Manifest Destiny occurs, and as colonialism begins in the Americas first, and then Manifest Destiny and all this kind of stuff, and Native Americans are nearly wiped out because of Western colonial genocide in these countries here, right, or in these lands, on these continents. Because of that, they couldn't do what they used to do, right? You can't follow the buffalo if someone decides, no, I actually own all of this land now personally myself, right? So it completely destroys the way that they do commerce, the way that they interact with everything, and say, no, now I just decidedly own this. If you fuck with me, I'll kill you. But if you're lucky, I'll send you off to a Christian boarding school, make you convert to Christianity, maybe abuse you, and then perhaps you'll live, right? But you have to be baptized into our economy. So, I mean, no, like and also like say that never happened, right? Say there was no America, but Europe developed and Asia developed as they are right now, as a hypothetical. Do you really think that the indigenous Americans wouldn't have also developed? I mean, come on. They would have developed a culture that was different than what we have right now. But do you think that they wouldn't have developed? Do you think that it was that factory that came in that made them turn civilized? That's just racist shit. It's old school racist shit. Gotta wash your brain of that, man. That is not Christ-like.
Are, begging on the street, or, selling their children, or
I'm gonna have to let some of this play.
Prostitution.
We cannot go more
for
than
women.
the 3
There just aren't good alternatives. So yeah, there are things problematic about that, and I'm not an apologist for those.
Sure.
But I think those do provide meaningful jobs. And in some parts of the world, Sean, families don't have a choice but to send their children to work because they can't feed their families without that. Right? Now, you might ask, well, why are they in that situation? Some of that has to do with the economic system that exists in.
Yeah, exactly, bro. And if the U.S. says none for you, right? Then none for you. That's how it works. It's kind of easy.
In general, it doesn't provide innovation. But again, that's another story. But
sure.
I don't want to equate being employed with being enslaved.
Agreed. Fair enough. Good distinction. So in part of his solution against capitalism, and you were referenced.
The main difference between being employed and being enslaved is that like it has the appearance of you not being a slave, right? And a little bit of extra movement because you're not enslaved to like a single person, right? You're not enslaved to a single person in the sense that you can leave one job and go to another job, theoretically, although that's not always possible. You can go to another job, right? But there are limits, and the limits that are there right now, rather than the ones Pastor Doobies wants to set, those limits are the limits set by oligarchs and capital owners. Like, it's just, they get to decide everything. I don't know.
Seen this earlier. This is what he calls private sufficiency plus public luxury. Let me just read the way he describes it. It's on page 66. He says, I'm personally a big fan of the idea of private sufficiency plus public luxury, to quote a mantra beloved of some eco-socialists. A society where nobody has a private swimming pool, but there are well-maintained and beautiful public pools every few blocks. Few people have cars, but public transit is a sci-fi dream. I can't own thousands of the books I covet, but every last little township library has a robust collection and a direct line to the fanciest research libraries in the world. Is that doable, what we should strive towards and be fans of, or is that an unworkable utopian dream?
Well, I think it's a nice idea in theory. And the public libraries, we just got back from New York City not long ago. New York City Public Library is astonishing.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. But private sufficiency, it will not motivate people to work harder.
So true.
I don't understand. Like, see, these people think that the nature of humankind is to just be lazy. And so they need policies that drive people to work harder. My question is, where the fuck is that in the Bible? The Bible don't teach that. That's some bullshit. That's some more heresy. Just riddled with heretical thought here. Riddled with heretical thought. Good thing Pastor Doobies is here to point this shit out. Unbelievable.
And this is where, we have to take into account the fallen timber of humanity. Although the Bible does not condemn the pursuit of self-interest.
Yo, fallen doesn't mean fucking lazy. I guess it can, but it also means fucking greedy and idolatry. 2-1, baby. I win.
Right? We'll get to that in part 2. But I think private sufficiency is not enough to keep people striving and working and continuing to bring new products to market that provide wealth and jobs and products and services that people need.
Yeah, obviously the USSR, China, places never invented anything. They didn't even have any art. They just kind of like nothing happened ever. They're just really blah all the time. Yeah, nothing. Dead. Ghosts, gray, all the stuff you see when the American media wants you to see pictures of those places. But hey, it doesn't hurt I mean, it does hurt me, but, in my day-to-day, believe what you want, buddy.
It's not going to provide the kind of medical innovation that's going to save lives. And the public luxury, I think, is subject to what environmentalists call the tragedy of the commons. And generally, when things are held in common, nobody owns them, and nobody takes responsibility for them.
That's right.
And nobody
this is dumb.
feels responsibility for them. That's a big part of the reason we have issues with the environment, because the pollution that I create, the wind takes that to somebody else's neighborhood, and I don't have to worry about it. Right? And rivers that are polluted.
All right, maybe I'm misunderstanding.
They go to other countries, and therefore I don't have to worry about it. And think about what's happened to public housing today. That's not a good advertisement for the possibility of public luxury. Now, lots of communities have great parks, but lots of parks are not privately owned. They're run down, and nobody has an incentive.
Bro, that's because the overwhelming majority of our budget and the tax money that's given to us goes to funding wars that benefit our oligarchs. What the fuck do you want me to say? This isn't proof of anything. Things have to be funded. And you can even argue, there's so many different factors here. Things have to be funded. And I guess the only argument you guys would have is you guys are so stubborn that you'll never agree to actually try any socialist policies. You'd rather start a civil war than deal with any kind of socialist shit at all and try. So in that sense, yeah, you make it nearly impossible to make socialism work, because your whole job is to propagandize people into hating anything that might actually be worth trying. And that's so negative and so gross and selfish and greedy. I think the Lord Jesus Christ would spit on this.
To keep them up.
My wife's family is a big car family, and one of the advice they gave us is never buy a used car that was a rental. Because people who drive a rental car are going to drive it differently, because they just turn the keys over to somebody else, versus one you own and care for because of human nature. And I think that makes your point, that good in theory, but just simply not going to work. I like libraries, but there's some books I like to own, and it means something to me, and I write it, and I go back to it, and I think there's not only not something wrong with that, there's something good about that I think he's missing. Biblical argument, love your take on this, is he talks about work and makes the point that he says Jesus decouples work from subsistence entirely. So this passage in Matthew 6, verses 28 through 30, I'll read it. And Jesus says, "And why are you anxious about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet I tell you, even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed like one of these. But if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is alive and tomorrow is thrown in the oven, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith?"
What's in between the lines on this is that work is primarily the means by which God clothes us and feeds us. And I don't think he's decoupling work from subsistence.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about either one of these arguments, but this guy's exegetical argument is trash, because Jesus is doing miracles and giving them shit and they're not working, and that's the context in which this kind of thing gets said. So, at least in the context that the author is talking about, he's right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say. You're just wrong.
What he's saying is that God will ultimately provide for you. He doesn't suggest what the means is to provide that. Sean,
interesting point.
I mean, how does God answer?
These guys are always more concerned about what the Bible doesn't say, and that is the effect of inerrancy. Because when you confront a contradiction, right, and you believe in the heretical doctrine of univocality and the heretical doctrine of inerrancy, if you believe in those things, then you become more interested not in what the text says, but in what the text doesn't say. You see a contradiction and you have to say, I must look behind some of this for some secret meaning, because this can't contradict, and the Bible speaks with one voice, so you're always looking for that, and that is what he's doing right here. Instead of accepting the plain meaning of the text like he claims to do, he is making his own worldly justifications for his capitalism.
The prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Mainly, it's by our jobs that we have, right? And I think in part, it's by the economic systems that we have that generate wealth. Right? To be honest, I can't remember the last time I prayed that prayer, except in church when we repeat the Lord's Prayer.
Right.
Because God has provided this through my job. Now, he also says later that Jesus also sacramentalized work.
He does.
And that, in part the reason is because our work contributes to the common good, but it also is the means by which we take care of ourselves and our dependents.
That's a great point. I'd not thought about that.
I mean, just to be clear, like, I'm not anti-work. Like, in the sense, I'm not let me put it this way. I'm not anti-labor. I don't think anyone out there is anti-labor. What they are anti is being forced to labor for things they don't believe in. Does that make sense? Things they don't believe in is what they're being forced to labor for, right? Because technically I'm laboring right now. My back hurts. I'm pastoring. I'm giving you theological sermons and talking about it. And, I obviously, before the show, set everything up. I've set my entire computer up so that I can very easily broadcast as the most skilled broadcasters do, giving you a show on the level of your least favorite mainstream media source. And look, that's labor, but I don't get paid for it because it's not at least at this point, maybe we will. If you want to tithe to the church, feel free to do that in any way you want. You want to throw us some shit on TikTok. You want to sub to us or throw us some donations on Twitch. You want to do something similar on YouTube, or you just want to send me money in a self-addressed stamped envelope, I will send you an autographed picture of Pastor Roland Doobies, and it will also be blessed. Will work like one of those prayer cloths that they sell on TBN. So if that's what you're looking for, we can start doing that. Yeah.
The means by which God gives the bread, the means by which God clothes us. I think the larger point he's making here, the end is
socialism is not against work.
Faith.
Was my
it's
point.
About their faith. It's about their trust in God. And this is merely an illustration to get there, not trying to decouple work from.
It's also it depends on how you're putting it in the argument he's making. Again, I'm less concerned about the book here, I guess, and just more thinking about, what do you mean by labor? What do you mean by work? What is the correct amount of that? Like, you guys are praising Jeff Bezos like he did shit. Dude started a book website. You think he worked for that money? What's his wage?
Subsistence in the way that he argues.
I'd want to ask our author, if he's taking this literally like this, why doesn't he quit his job?
Fair question.
Why does he get up and go? Because he knows that if you don't work, you're probably not going to eat.
Which is the danger of
no one.
Taking passages out of a larger biblical.
Look, because while I understand taking the Bible seriously, I'm also not a fucking idiot. I'm Pastor Reverend Roland Doobies, and I'm led by the Spirit of the Holy One. So get over it and get ready when I say to you that you have to get the point of the passage. This is like, you don't like capitalism, then get rid of your iPhone. Oh, you interpret this passage like this, then you should do this. No, I'm like, the point of interpreting it like that and saying is there's too much of an emphasis on bootlicking for capitalists in the church. And so I want to make this distinction between, and say work isn't all that it's cracked up to be, because it's not. You won't find a single person on the Bushman Entertainment Network who loves work. We don't, but we mean something specific, right? Because the same people who say we don't love work will go out and hunt for actual food that we eat, right? Or they'll spend time with their children, teach them things, play games with them, go fishing, right? Or they will try to become some sort of athlete, a skier, maybe. Or they will try to develop a multimedia empire. Nobody's getting paid for any of this shit. You know what I mean? But it doesn't mean it's not labor. It's wear and tear on our body. It's just also it's laboring at things that interest us, things that we want to do. And so the socialist point of view would be, let's free people up to labor more in that way. There are communal, societal things that we must also share and do the labor of, because it's just part of it. You know, sometimes you got to do what you don't want to do. But if theoretically you could free up more time for everyone and be productive enough to provide everyone not only with just the things we need, but also maybe some cool shit on the end without going too far, that would be a better society. And that's more like socialism, because in capitalism, I just have to focus on whatever the bosses who determine what culture is tell me is important.
Context
in
which
for that.
Paul has a lot to say in the Proverbs about somebody being worthy of their wages and specifically working. All right, so I got just a few more for you here. At the root of some of this, he argues that Christians should view everyone as their neighbor. So should we view everybody as our neighbor, and should the government not favor citizens over non-citizens?
Well, I think, put it this way. The parable of the Good Samaritan suggests that our neighbor is anyone who has a need. That's the definition of our neighbor. Now, that's right. I think we have slightly different obligations to different types of neighbors. Relationships.
Wrong, because the neighbor's like the enemy, right? That's the whole thing. The Samaritan is the enemy that comes. Samaritan, as far as I understand it, in that parable, right? You have people that walk by. Who walks by? Priests, religious people, people of the same culture, other Jewish people in that parable walk by. And Jesus is like, oh, then a Samaritan comes up. Who's the Samaritan? The Samaritan is like someone who Jewish people hated. They had a bit of a rivalry. Didn't really like each other that much, right? But it's that dude that has the heart to say, this person is in rough shape. I'm going to rescue them, and went and took care of them. Like, that's the whole thing. If anything, Jesus especially, if anything, says if you're going to have loyal to anyone, it's not to your family. It's not to your nation. It's not to those close to you. It's to the other. It's to, like, I don't know how you can make any fucking other argument if you think Jesus is important. You can find other places in the Bible where that's not the case. But you have to completely stamp out the radicality of what and who Jesus was in order to come to that sort of conclusion. It's bullshit.
Okay. For example, I have what compassion looks like for my students is different than what it looks like for my family.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because there are things that I will do for my family that I won't do for my students. Okay? Just to clue my students in on that.
Yeah.
just to let you know.
He's making my point, right? This is exactly what Jesus says in another place too. It's like, it's in the Sermon on the Mount, actually. So it's like, so like you love your brothers or like your family. It's like, so fucking what? Even the heathen do that. Love your enemy. That's what I say. I mean, so no, you're proving my point.
And also, I think
yes, like people do tend to do that by nature, even with sin, right? That's what they do. They tend to lean in to help their family. But what's radical and what Jesus says to do, no, that's not what we're doing. We're doing something different. We're loving the enemy. We're like not focusing on our family. We're not focusing on our enemy. We're creating solidarity across cultural boundaries and across familial boundaries so that we can resist the tyranny of the empire. And that is what's going on in the Gospels.
Depends on proximity
and in Paul.
And ability and stewardship. Okay? I think what he's suggesting here is something akin to open borders, immigration policy. But I think it fails to take
no one
into
wants
account
open borders.
That governments have limited resources. And the citizens that pay taxes, I think, have a greater claim on the...
This is another argument for socialism, though. Like, just think about one simple thing, right? If you go to, like, Europe and you got sick or, like, broken arm, you could go to the hospital or most of these other countries, like at least in the developed world, probably in other places too. You go, like, you're not going to leave there with crippling debt. You get injured in your own country, you are. So first of all, citizens here are treated like shit as it is, right? But like, European countries aren't broke because a tourist comes there and, you know, has to do a hospital visit. It doesn't ruin their economy, right? And it's also really weird. Like, there's many complex reasons why people come to America, but if you are stupid enough to believe that they come here to take advantage of our bullshit ass social safety net, I don't know what to tell you. Like, that's just a brain dead take. It's a brain dead take. We don't do anything here for anybody, right? Go to England. They won't be fucking hunting you down to send you to CCOT, at least, if you break your arm.
There's resources than those who do not. Right? Now, those who have need also have a claim on the common resources. I think that's true. But I don't think governments are necessarily wrong to restrict those exercising those claims to those who are citizens. Right? Now, I think that we need to leave some room for people who are non-citizens as a safety net. I think for example, I think they ought to be provided with medical care because that's a public health concern if they're not. But I think that the combination of...
But they're not getting anything else. If they're getting anything else, they're not getting it from the federal government. Let's put it that way. Some states do decide to do that, and you know what? They decide to do that through democratic elections, right? So that's fine. Granted, there might be people in those states who don't like it. Eat a dick. It's called a democracy. There's too many things to count that our government does with my taxpayer money that I don't want to happen. But this is America. It doesn't mean you get everything you want like a spoiled little fucking baby. It means that we are a democracy.
Open borders in a welfare state is a prescription for, I think, a stewardship disaster. And I think that's probably not quite what's taken into account.
I think that's fair. I don't know. We could have a discussion about this. You might be right. Whether the point of the Good Samaritan is that my neighbor is anyone in need versus we should not just assume that my neighbor is those who are like me and I get along with, but it expands my boundaries to include somebody like the Good Samaritan. Wait a minute, they're my enemies. And obviously the Bible's not going to address the age of the internet where we're aware of needs around the world and the impossibility of managing that. I mean, right now, my wife, we have a neighbor who's not doing well, and she was shopping yesterday and went over and delivered food to her and spent an hour just talking with her. There's a responsibility to somebody across the street from us that you don't have equally to somebody on the other side of the world. Doesn't mean we don't care about them, doesn't mean we don't give to them, but there still is...
It's weighted more heavily.
I don't think it's... Yeah, weighted more heavily. It's not possible to treat every single person on the planet.
Yeah, that's fine, but that's an extreme that, like, yeah, the Bible doesn't ask you to do that, and it's a silly moral position because no one would ever say that. But that doesn't mean you can't think about, like, collectively, globally, sociologically, right? And psychologically. Like, you can think about those things, and you should. It, like, doesn't give you an excuse to, in your moral reasoning, just ignore everyone except the person who's like right in your fucking face, right? Or to only think about your own concerns or the people who are in your own sphere of influence. No, you need to do the work of considering people who are not in your sphere of influence, right? And even still, like, are you gonna feel differently? Like if someone who is here, they are here, and they are here legally, right? But they're not citizens. Maybe they don't have a green card, but like, you know, these things are fucking complicated, right? Maybe they're in between a certain period or they're about to go get checked and then ICE shows up and starts taking them. Do you let them go or do you defend them because they're right across the fucking street? Like, that's a better thing than saying, oh, someone didn't feel good. I brought her some chicken noodle soup and that makes me very Jesus-y. No, it's like, are you gonna go like, because I know that Jesus said that Peter did too much by being violent to the Roman centurion by like cutting off his ear with a sword, but I didn't see Jesus condemn Peter for being bold and being like aggressively defending Jesus, right? Because that was good. And I believe that while you should practice nonviolence, the absolute right move would be to run up and do what you can to interfere with the unlawful arrest by masked pussies to take someone who's just trying to fucking survive and probably has a family that's not doing shit. That's my view.
As a government or an individual,
Pastor Doobie's is a real Christian.
It seems
That's
to me.
sort of what I meant by proximity.
Real Christian
fair
shit.
enough.
Determines the weighting.
Real Christian
That makes
shit.
sense. So a couple last questions and we'll wrap this up. I'm curious what, at the very end, he has this suggestion about how to move forward to get people to become leftists. And he says, we need to recruit Christian moms of all genders. So in part, there's the angle of like, do we need to recruit more moms than more guys? And this is probably such a stereotype, but some would say the left can lean towards more feminine compassion. The right can lean more masculine with justice. And these are just kind of stereotypical ways sometimes people will characterize
definitely
that.
a
So for somebody in the left that leans into compassion and solidarity to say we need more moms, it's interesting because in this moment, we're seeing more guys, at least in the US, become more conservative and more women leaning
is
to
a
the
weird
left a
way to
little
put
bit. It's an interesting moment to say that. So there's that piece, but then Christian moms of all genders.
Yeah, we should just point that out and then otherwise leave it alone.
I do have.
I know you can't.
I have
you can't
to.
help
At point
yourself.
when you say that, I'm like, I'm sorry, you have left the Christian faithful farm. That is nowhere in Scripture.
left
The
the
idea
Christian
that a
worldview.
biological male can be a mom it's an.
I get that this is a very weird subject for a lot of people, and especially for conservative Christians. And I don't know who this Crispin guy wrote the book for. So it really depends, I guess, on who you're writing to, whether I feel like that is a necessary thing, because it is sort of a stumbling block for these guys. Not that I care that much, like, eat a dick, but if you're trying to, if the book is written towards Christians like this, then, and you're trying to persuade them, I just don't know that it was necessary. But if you're trying to write to, you know, people who are really thinking and they're on the boundary, they're kind of open to affirming LGBT people, then it's like fine, because it's a little bit less aggressive to these guys. Because it's, I don't know, based on the conversation, I feel like it is sort of an aside. There's not a lot to it. The point of the matter is that, like, kids need to be cared for by people who are, you know, concerned about them, compassionate, who teach them, who love them, right? And that's what he wants to emphasize, I'm sure, even without reading it. I guess that's it. And by talking about this with, well, at least these guys talking about it, they're very focused on the fact that, like, the language you use to say that, right? I mean, again, I don't really care. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just trying to look at who the audience is.
Insult. I hate to say, I'm not to an individual person,
I need to finish
but to the clear teachings of Scripture, Genesis, all the way forward.
Right. Yeah, he says we need to recruit Christian moms because they get things done. That's why.
That's probably
which sounds,
true.
That sort of wipes out that masculine feminine characterization that we were going for. But I get why he wants to recruit people to the cause, but I think the hard left is a really hard sell for most people, and I think this is why the candidacy of folks like Bernie Sanders never really went anywhere. So it's a tough sell because
that's a hilarious take. Because first of all, I wouldn't say evangelical Christians, but there were people who maybe were more independent-minded, even leaning right-wing, who did kind of like Bernie Sanders because he presented himself in a way that was palatable, understanding. He led with policy, and people were like, I can get down with that thing. Let's fucking go. And he lost in 2016 because the Democrats are shady as fuck, and Hillary Clinton's a scammer. 2020 campaign fell short, but Bernie Sanders is the reason why AOC is probably going to run for president in 2028 and probably will win if there's elections, right? And he's the reason Zoran Mamdani is now the mayor and one of the most famous and beloved current politicians in the United States of America, right? Bernie Sanders did start a movement. It's slow and it's hard. And it's not because we're so radical. It's because you guys are so fucking propagandized, man. It is. Like, no one thinks like America because we are the most propagandized country on the world. Or in the world, excuse me. And it's because we're not free, man. We're not free. We have to spend like all of our time working or playing. And it's demanded that you do both. The one thing that you're not supposed to do is like read books and shit. And you're definitely supposed to talk out of your ass constantly.
I think people recognize that incentives matter, and that you have to account for reality in a fallen world. And markets do a really good job of that.
We're going to talk about that in our next episode, but I feel in some ways it feels like a tug in between my heart and my mind, because a lot of things he writes, my heart goes, yeah, I want solidarity like that. I want to have this universal connection with people and care for the poor and the environment. Like some of the stories he tells are pulling on the heartstrings. Like I get why people are drawn to the left. I understand it. At the very end, though, why I think I'm not, is there's no other way to put it than it's just divorced from reality. He writes on page 162, one of the most important things about leftism is that it is a rejection of the existing reality in favor of moral values that no society has made concrete yet. And I go, yeah, it hasn't made it concrete. Why? Because it doesn't line up with human value. It doesn't line up.
No, it doesn't line up. Like, this is a fundamental, maybe it's the worst part of Christianity on the low. Their understanding of like anthropology is so fucking dumb. It's so dumb on every single level. They believe it's a weird mix, because they don't even think through it the majority of the time, right? It's a weird mix of presuppositionalism and natural law, right? On the one hand, it's like they take so many things for granted as if this is just how humans are. They've never been a different way, and they can't ever change. Part of that is because these people believe in creationism. Many of them believe in a young earth. I'm not sure about these guys, but people don't change, right? We're all, and I would say no, like what I know in my lifetime is what it is like to be a product of American financial capitalism, because that has been like that's like the biggest influence on my life. And so the survival tactics I adopt, the approaches I take to living, the desires I have for items, the needs I feel like I have, and the difficulty differentiating between what is an actual need and what is a desire that has been like pushed upon me is so difficult. I don't believe that humans are anything. I don't believe that we're blank slates in the sense that we can become anything. There are certain things that involve genetics, but even with genetics, like genetics don't tell me that I need to drink alcohol. Genetics don't tell me, like that I'm definitely going to be gay. I don't believe in like predestination or something, right? Like most of this is cultural. Like, yes, I believe people are born with a sex drive, but whether they're heterosexual or homosexual is, I would argue, like unconscious, but largely culturally defined, right? And the same thing with like every other fucking thing, right? You don't know, you don't recall, you don't remember or know why you have this desire necessarily. Sometimes you've had it for as long as you can possibly remember. So there's basically zero difference in your mind between what is natural and what is, nurtured into you. But the fact of the matter is, you would not be a huge fan of chocolate if you were a human on a world without chocolate, where it never fucking existed, or you never had encountered it. Even if those fucking genetics were there, they would never be, like, the taste buds that make you love it or whatever, like, wouldn't be activated. You would never have it, right? So the world affects the way that you desire all across the world. So this, like, the fundamental understanding of human nature is like, oh no, this is just not how people think. Yes, exactly. But is 100% because this is how you have been conditioned to think. Because people in other countries, people in other contexts, people who were born in different religions, right? And especially people who haven't had contact with your way of thinking, do not think like you. They don't, right? there can be some overlap, but even when there's overlap, they probably understand it and define it in ways so drastically different from you that like you're barely understanding each other when you first start communicating, right? So no, like it's when, that's why to me, when someone starts talking about natural law or this is the way it is, what it says to me is you've never interrogated your own presuppositions, because you just naturally accept that this is the way it was meant to be. It was predestined. It was automatic. And that is a lack of critical thinking skills.
Up with economic laws. It doesn't line up with human nature and our self-interest.
This is my longest stream ever.
So it's not that we haven't tried it yet. Soon. It's that we've tried it and it's failed, and that's the consistent record. So I'm not a leftist because I don't think the Bible supports it. And even if I wasn't a Christian, I wouldn't be a leftist because it just doesn't match up with reality. It doesn't work. Now, if you have any final comments on that, great. But maybe tell us, we're going to do a part 2 on the positive.
We're not going to listen
to
part 2.
Economics.
Right. Definitely not
I've written
today, but not
the
ever.
virtues of
because we're ending the stream.
That was the
this was a banger.
Fair enough.
And we
replay immediately available on YouTube,
and I think there are
pretty quickly available
biblical
on Twitch.
And moral justification for
and
organizing.
I'll be back, obviously, on TikTok too. TikTok is ripping. Thank you for the viewers. People need to start fucking chiming in now. Comment. Pastor Doobies is a lovable figure.
And it doesn't mean that there shouldn't be abuses, but as we've said before, the problem with capitalism is capitalists. The problem with socialism is socialism. That's the problems you mentioned, that's intrinsic to the system.
That's right.
And whenever it's been tried, it has failed.
Well, I'm looking forward to that episode. And if you're watching this on either YouTube or listening on the Think Biblical podcast, make sure you comment or you send in your email thoughts to us.
You know what I really appreciated about that video? No ads. You know, we're a poor church here. We accept tithes, but no one ever does, and that's okay. We don't have to have your tithes. The Spirit of the Lord keeps us breathing, but we'd accept them. Normally, though, we get a bunch of YouTube ads because I don't have YouTube Premium. Although I am thinking about investing in that for the upcoming year as things unfold. 2026, Bushman Entertainment Network Project 2026, way better than Heritage Foundation's Project 2025. In fact, we're going to overturn Project 2025 and do a lot more cool shit if we're going to be serious about it here. All right, closing remarks. I'm ready to close down. Probably the longest stream ever. Definitely up there. Over 3 hours and 15 minutes, but I think it was pretty good. My back hurts. I got a nice little buzz going from these couple double IPAs that I've been drinking here. And I hope all of you were informed or at least provoked to think about these things a little bit more. Again, I would really appreciate more interaction. I'm happy to do entire streams, talking to people, debating issues, learning together, reacting to videos. I'm really, 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 really open and would love it. But I'm also happy to just, do what I've been doing. Recapping some of the biggest influential figures in my life, taking a look at what people today are saying, keeping our eyes on the Christian nationalist movement, hunting heretics, and the like. But this was a good intro, I think, because these guys are probably the nicest of the people that we're going to watch, right? I don't think they were bad faith. I do think they're uninformed. And what do you expect when it comes to Americans? But next week, at least right now, the plan, or next time, whenever that is to watch. We're gonna delve into a little bit more of the way that the even farther right than these guys like to think about left-wing thought and how that relates to their feeling about Jewish people. So it might get a little bit intense, but it's what we must do. So for the Bushman Entertainment Network, I am the Pastor Reverend Roland Doobies.